A door. Fang Hao's gaze shifted from the treasure chest. Yeah, it was covered in vines. I even pulled them back to make sure. It's definitely a door, carved with many beautiful women and winged angels, the subordinate said seriously. Based on past experience, the existence of a door leading to the next area signifies a new space. It can also be understood as the second area of the dungeon. Similarly, a treasure chest can be obtained after clearing it. Okay, I understand. Everyone, rest where you are. We'll go see what's behind the door later. Fang Hao nodded. Yes, my lord. Everyone returned to the spot previously covered by the mist and sat down. The entire graveyard, only this place was relatively clean. There were no severed limbs or broken bones. Everyone chatted and rested. Fang Hao, meanwhile, went to the treasure chest and opened it directly. Obtained. Glass manufacturing plant blueprint, blue. Cotton flannel acolyte gloves blueprint, green. Cotton flannel robe blueprint, green. Bronze bell hardwood shepherd's staff blueprint, green. Colorful silkworm summoning scroll, purple. Light stone X22, shadow stone X31, war coin X174. The moment the treasure chest was opened, various colored lights nearly blinded him. Besides the blueprints and rare materials, there was also a colorful silkworm summoning scroll. This was the first time he had seen this type of summoning scroll. Colorful silkworm summoning scroll, purple. Category, summoning scroll. Description, after use, 50 to 100 units of colorful silkworm larvae can be summoned. They can be bred and raised. Colorful silkworms can randomly produce silk of various colors. Currently, the high-grade silk that can be produced in the territory is Holy Snow Silk and Night Orchid Silk. Silk of other colors still requires later processing and dyeing. After a series of processes, the texture and effect of the silk are somewhat affected. If silk of the corresponding color can be produced directly, many complicated steps can be avoided. This can not only improve the quality of the silk, but also reduce labor and consumption. It can play a significant role in the development of the territory's fabric shops. After examining the summoning scroll, he continued to look at the glass manufacturing plant. Glass manufacturing plant, wood X2200, stone brick X3500, iron X1200, metal parts X820, red flame essence X5. Description, through processing, non-crystalline solids that maintain a certain shape can be produced. Glass manufacturing plant. Currently, none of the buildings in the territory have glass. The current weather rarely sees rainy days, but sometimes the mist can make the bedding in the rooms damp. Moreover, autumn will arrive here in half a month. With glass, the impact of the rainy season and temperature drops can also be prevented. Fang Hao opened his lord's book again, vaguely remembering a blueprint that required glass. After flipping through it, he indeed found the stone seat black iron street lamp blueprint. The crafting materials included a glass lampshade. He just didn't know if the materials for making glass would be abundant after construction, and whether it could directly produce glass for windows and glass lampshades. Following were 3 equipment blueprints. Cotton flannel acolyte gloves, flax X1, cotton cloth X2, thread X3, cotton flannel robe, cotton cloth X5, thread X4, iron X1, bronze bell hardwood shepherd staff, tough hardwood X2, leather X3, brass X2, iron X1. Description, a wooden staff with a bronze bell. When the bell is shaken, the sheep and cattle being herded will automatically run back. The first 2 are equipment needed by acolytes. They are not needed in the territory, but they can be sold to the temple. However, the high priest of the temple, Priest Miriam, seems a bit rigid, and he doesn't know if she will buy this equipment. The third blueprint is called Bronze Bell Hardwood Shepherd's Staff. He initially thought it was equipment worn by acolytes. But looking at the description, it is more like a staff used for herding sheep and cattle. After returning, he can try to craft one and check its attributes to understand its specific function. In addition to the blueprint rewards, there were also 22 light stones and 31 shadow stones. Although it was the first time seeing light stones, their function was not unfamiliar. They are recruitment materials for the corresponding faction. Their function is the same as shadow stones and bloodstones. However, seeing light stones and shadow stones appear at the same time was truly a first. Using the Lord's book, He recorded all the blueprints. The other spoils of war to be taken were also put into his storage space. Fang Hao stood up, clapped his hands, and said loudly, all right, let's go see what's behind the door. The sooner we finish, the sooner we can leave this place." Everyone stood up and began to check their equipment, ready to set off. "What about this guy?" Anya stretched out her leg and kicked Eric, who was lying on the side. Perhaps because he had already been given anesthetic. Eric had been unconscious until now, lying on the ground and snoring. His wounds had stopped bleeding. But for them to heal, he would probably need some time to recuperate. Two people, carry him for now and see if there's any danger behind the door. Fang Hao thought for a moment and said. Eric was a decent person and had helped Fang Hao get this quest. Although this quest was very likely a trap set by the Dragon Scale mercenary group, it was also a good intention. Since they had the ability to take him, they might as well take him out. After all, if only he returned from this team, it would be difficult to explain in Lysis City. In the distance around, there were still wandering white monkeys. Although they didn't dare to approach, they were watching from afar. If Eric was left here alone, he was afraid that this fat man would become food for these monsters in an instant. So, it's better to first confirm whether there is still danger behind that door. As soon as Fang Hao finished speaking, two strong men immediately stepped forward and lifted Eric up, one on each side. Everyone advanced again, stepping over the corpses, and directly arrived at the location of the next door. The large door was at the end of the graveyard. Because the wall was covered with dense vines, no one had noticed that there was a door here before. Clear the vines and push open the door to see what's behind it. Fang Hao continued. The subordinates drew their long swords from their waists. They began to hack at the vines on the wall. Soon, the area around the large door was cleared, revealing the carvings on the door. Besides the religious symbols around, the stone doors on both sides had images of angels holding swords, and also images of human women singing loudly. The female figures were very beautiful, and it was still evident that the craftsmen who carved the figures had excellent skills. One subordinate looked at them and unconsciously touched the relief carvings a few times. Holy Light Graveyard. At the top of the stone door, 4 characters were carved. Another graveyard. But from the exquisite carvings on the door, it could also be seen that the Holy Light Graveyard in front of them and the Glory Graveyard were clearly not on the same level. Open the door. Several subordinates stepped forward and pushed open the stone door with force. The stone door opened little by little, accompanied by the sound of stone slabs rubbing. As the stone door opened little by little, the scene behind the door also appeared in their line of sight. Everyone's expression gradually changed from curiosity to surprise. In front of them was an independent graveyard, although it was not as large as the graveyard outside. However, the structure of the graveyard was very magnificent, rather than saying it was a long-abandoned graveyard. It was more like a park filled with sacred aura. Behind the stone door was an arched passage leading to the depths of the Holy Light Graveyard. Archways were connected to form a long corridor, covered with various green plants. On both sides of the archways were elegant female stone sculptures with different poses. In the hands of the sculptures, they held books, ritual staffs, some held harps and sang loudly. Wow, this place is better than our stockade, one subordinate said unconsciously. Grizzly Bear turned around and kicked the subordinate who was being cheeky. He cursed in a cold voice. This is a graveyard. If you talk nonsense again, don't go back to the stockade. Live here. Hee, no, I was just joking. Big sister, let's move these statues back. They look good. Yeah, these women are better looking than those street women in the XE district. So big. A group of bandits looked at the scene in front of them and chatted in low voices. There was no sense of tension before a big battle. At the end of the passage was a huge stone monument. The text on the stone monument was covered with vines, but it could be confirmed that the owner of this stone monument had a very high status. There doesn't seem to be any enemies here. Anya poked her head out and looked inside. If there were enemies, they would probably have attacked as soon as the door opened. Now it was peaceful and serene inside, forming a sharp contrast with the ground full of corpses outside. But as soon as Anya finished speaking, Dimitri, who was next to her, raised an opposing opinion. If there was no danger, this place would also be occupied by white monkeys, and it wouldn't be so well preserved. Hearing this, everyone realized that something was wrong. The white monkeys outside had shown considerable combat strength, and there were quite a few of them. If there was really no danger inside, it should have been occupied and destroyed by white monkeys long ago. Where would there be such a magnificent and elegant scene now? Fang Hao also felt that it made sense. I'll check the situation first. Protect me, Fang Hao said, then sat down on the side. He opened his backpack and released the skeleton gray sparrows he was carrying. After casting Divine Descent, he controlled the skeleton gray sparrows to fly towards the holy light graveyard behind the stone door, passing through the long arched corridor. On both sides were the Maidstone sculptures, with no changes. But when he flew into the air and overlooked the graveyard, Fang Hao's heart stirred. There really were enemies. Outside the corridor, in a location not visible from the stone door entrance, humanoid stone statues were set up. These stone statues were not the artistic stone sculptures full of artistic atmosphere at the entrance. Instead, they were constructs. Stone Golem Construct Warrior, Tier 5. Stone Golem Construct Spearman, Tier 5. In Xiao Yu's ancient tomb, Fang Hao had encountered this type of mechanical construct wrapped in thick stone armor. Ordinary skeleton soldiers' swords and knives would only create sparks when they struck them. Their defense was very high. He quickly counted. There were a total of 22 stone construct statues set up below, all in a static state, covered in dust and plants. Perhaps it was because they were exposed to the air. Fang Hao checked again himself, but did not find any iron golem constructs. He controlled the skeleton gray sparrow to continue flying deeper. When approaching the stone monument, Fang Hao's pupils constricted again. On both sides of the stone monument, for female constructs made entirely of metal were kneeling. The reason they were called female was because these four constructs were different from those heavy and tall iron golem constructs. Their figures were close to humans, with female-like waistlines. If he hadn't seen the attributes, Fang Hao would have thought they were really four women wearing armor and kneeling there. Valkyrie Construct, Tier 10. Damn it. Fang Hao cursed in his heart, who was buried in here. They actually arranged Tier 10 constructs to act as guards. He continued to fly around the graveyard for a week, and after not finding any other dangers, he flew back. Dispelling Divine Descent, Fang Hao also woke up. How is it? Anya asked curiously. There is indeed danger. Inside, there are 22 Tier 5 stone golem constructs and 4 Tier 10 constructs called Valkyries. It's still unclear if there are other dangers. Fang Hao told everyone what he had seen. After hearing Fang Hao's words, the two heroes didn't react much. But Grizzly Bear and the other bandit subordinates' faces changed. Although they didn't know what constructs were, when they heard about 22 Tier 5 and Tier 10 enemies, their faces began to turn ugly. They only had 23 people this time, including the two bone dragons. That was 25. And the number of enemies meant that each of them had to face one. Most of the bandits were only Tier 3 or 4. How could they be a match for these constructs? For a moment, there was some chaos in the back. Fang Hao naturally understood everyone's concerns. Do what you can. If these few people were really hard to fight, he wouldn't risk attacking. When the skeleton army is mobilized later, let alone those few constructs, they would even flatten the graveyard. Do you think we can take them on? What are the chances of winning? Fang Hao looked at the two heroes in front of him. We can fight, Anya said with certainty, but without a reason. Dmitri thought for a moment and said, My lord, I agree with Miss Anya's statement. In this situation, it is still uncertain whether the constructs can maintain their functionality. Even if they are all well preserved, we can set up some traps and obstacles in advance to reduce the number of constructs. Constructs are very good graveyard guards. They have no life and are eternal guardians. But they are also affected by the environment. Too much moisture, dust accumulation, internal parts damage, constructs will still be damaged. In an underground ancient tomb like Xiao Yu's, the preservation might be a little better. In the scene before them, flowers and plants had grown in the joints of the constructs. It was difficult to judge how many could move. Fang Hao listened, And when he heard Dmitri mention traps, he suddenly remembered that he had just obtained the quicksand trap magic scroll. Could it be that this was also something the Dragon Scale mercenary group had prepared in advance? Fang Hao thought for a moment. He felt that it was worth a try. He glanced at the fat man Eric, who was snoring and still fast asleep on the side. He said, "Find a complete coffin and hide him inside." Next, they still had to continue fighting, and they didn't have time to look after this fat guy. The best way was to find a safe place to hide him first. After the battle ended, they could take him away. Hearing Fang Hao's words, everyone also took action. They opened a well-preserved stone coffin and lifted the corpse out. They carved 2 ventilation holes on the side of the stone coffin, placed Eric directly inside, and sealed the lid. To ensure safety, they covered it with 2 layers of hard stone slabs. Even if those white monkeys discovered Eric in the stone coffin, it would be very difficult for them to open the heavily reinforced stone coffin for a while. After settling Eric, everyone began to prepare for the upcoming battle. 22 stone golem constructs for Valkyrie constructs. Even though Dimitega and Anya had no problem dealing with constructs, they were still dangerous for others. Fortunately, there was a certain distance between the stone golem constructs and the Valkyrie constructs. Judging by the distance, the two wouldn't be triggered at the same time. They could use this point to eliminate the stone golem constructs first before dealing with the Valkyrie constructs. After carefully discussing the strategy with Dimitega and the others, everyone began to act. Fang Hao said to Anya, "Don't get close to the stone tablet. Lure the stone golems over. I'll use a magic scroll. Don't take any risks." Since there were no skeleton units in the team, and the skeleton Gray Sparrow didn't trigger the constructs after flying around for a week, the task of luring the monsters fell to Anya. With her blue hero attributes, triggering and luring the stone golem constructs over was no problem at all. "Got it," Anya readily agreed. Since their relationship had progressed, Anya was also more obedient. At this moment, a few bandit subordinates also ran back. "Lord, everything is set up." Fang Hao nodded and didn't delay any longer. He directly ordered, "All right, proceed according to the plan. Anya, be careful." "Yes," everyone responded. As soon as the words fell, Anya's figure rushed into the Holy Light Cemetery. She quickly passed through the arched corridor and circled around the location of the stone golem constructs. Crack, crack. As Anya ran ahead, a sound of grinding stones echoed behind her. The 22 stone golem constructs were activated, their bodies shaking violently as they moved. Dust scattered from their bodies. They casually tore off the vines covering them and picked up the weapons beside them, which were already covered in rust. Crack, crack. Their heads turned stiffly, all looking at the fleeing invaders in the distance. Immediately after, they began to move with heavy steps, chasing in the direction of the invaders. Piercing, grinding noises filled every corner. After Anya activated the stone golem constructs, she didn't go any deeper. She circled around and turned to flee back the way she came. The stone golems followed closely behind, crashing through everything regardless, smashing the statues of maidens, flower beds, and arches along the way into pieces. Fragments scattered everywhere. Fang Hao watched the distance, and when it reached the predetermined position, he directly unfurled the magic scroll quicksand trap, pointing his finger at the feet of the constructs. The next second, a stream of yellow energy light flew out from the scroll, sinking into the ground beneath the construct's feet. The originally hard ground began to soften, forming a sand vortex with a diameter of over 10 meters. It began to swallow everything around it, including the constructs that walked into it. The surrounding flower beds and statues began to be swallowed by the quicksand, and the construct's forward momentum slowed. They also began to sink little by little. "Detonators," Fang Hao said again. The bandit subordinates who had been waiting for the order immediately pulled the trigger lines with force. In the beginning, they had placed a large number of detonators at the ambush point. Constructs had no intelligence. The detonators were placed in plain sight, and even if they saw them, they wouldn't retreat or avoid them. As the trigger lines were pulled, the fuses of the detonators at the ambush point were also pulled. After a puff of black smoke, boom, 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 boom. Earth-shattering explosions filled the entire cemetery. Fang Hao and the others quickly retreated backward, avoiding the walls that were shaking and about to collapse from the vibration. After the explosions, everything returned to calm. As expected, I put too many detonators. Fang Hao cursed while covering his ringing ears. There were 22 constructs, which was quite a lot. To avoid any casualties, Fang Hao had increased the number of detonators. However, he didn't expect that he had still put too many. He almost blew up the entire tomb. As the smoke dissipated, everyone recovered. Looking back at the Holy Light Cemetery, there was no longer any sign of the stone golem constructs, and even the quicksand trap had disappeared. Huge depressions were left on the ground. Clean up the battlefield, but don't get close to the central area, Fang Hao continued. Everyone began to move, collecting the loot they could find. Harvest. Energy Core 4, Metal Parts 142, Precision Parts 72, Shadow Stone 5. Explosions didn't care what kind of parts you were. These were the only items that could be collected intact. The rest had all turned into fragments in the explosion. After collecting the loot, everyone entered the Holy Light Cemetery. Without the arched corridor, the view was much wider. In the distance, they could clearly see the tombstone ahead and the 4 female constructs. The tombstone was weathered, but the words Sidony, priest, were still faintly visible. The time of death and life story were covered by vines, making them impossible to see clearly. On both sides of the tombstone, 4 constructs in full iron armor knelt. Unlike the clumsy iron armor of the iron golem constructs, the Valkyrie constructs were only about 1.8 meters tall, and their full-body iron armor was more exquisite, even showing off a woman's graceful figure. Their waists were slender and their legs long. Their full metal armor was carved with patterns of wings, branches, and flowers. If it weren't for the slender iron swords they held in their hands, one might mistake them for exquisite handicrafts. Fang Hao and the others did not approach, but stopped far away. The ambush just now was very successful. There are still 4 constructs inside. Let's set up traps first and pull the trigger lines when they come in, Fang Hao continued. As he spoke, he took out a large number of detonators from his storage space. The bandit subordinates were even more skilled the second time, placing the detonators at the predetermined locations. With everything ready, they didn't need Anya to lure the monsters. Fang Hao directly threw a fire arrow, hitting the Valkyrie's chest. The fire arrow shattered, turning into sparks of fire. The Valkyrie's body began to tremble slightly. Then, she pushed off the ground with her ankle and directly sprang up. Holding the long sword in her hand, she turned her head towards the crowd. The next second, whoosh. 4 figures shot out, launching an attack towards the invaders. Their speed was far beyond Fang Hao's imagination. Quick, pull the trigger lines, Fang Hao exclaimed, startled, and immediately shouted. The bandit subordinates immediately pulled the trigger lines. Boom, boom, boom. However, the explosion points still couldn't catch up with the Valkyrie's speed. Their figures had already passed the ambush point when the detonators exploded. Prepare for battle, Fang Hao said with a solemn expression, giving the order loudly. The bandits instantly raised their shields, protecting Fang Hao in the center. Meanwhile, Dimitega and Anya went left and right to meet the charging constructs. Dimitega, on the left, reached the construct faster. He swung his sword horizontally, aiming straight for the construct's neck. Hiss! The Valkyrie didn't stop. Her body quickly sank, sliding under the long sword, and she swung her own sword back. Dimitega shifted his feet, retreated a step, and dodged the attack. The Valkyrie supported herself on the ground with one hand, stabilized her body, and immediately followed up, engaging in a fierce battle with Dimitega. Fang Hao's eyes widened as he watched the scene before him. A Tier 10 unit was actually fighting an orange hero like Dimitega without showing any disadvantage. He looked over at Anya's side again. The situation was basically the same. The Valkyrie constructs displayed extremely high combat ability and mobility. They were more flexible than ordinary Tier 10 units, and could even perform some combat techniques that others couldn't achieve. These were no longer just simple constructs. They were highly skilled weapon masters. The other 2 Valkyries were already charging towards them. Fang Hao's expression was serious, and he said coldly, "Dragon breath. Roar." The two bone dragons beside him crouched down, extending their necks towards the Valkyries charging towards them. The next second, beams of black energy light sprayed out from the bone dragons' mouths, instantly engulfing the two Valkyries. The breath lasted for a few seconds before the bone dragons closed their mouths, ending the breath attack. And in the ruins in the distance, the two Valkyrie constructs stood up unsteadily. Their iron armor was a fiery orange-red, like heated iron. Smoke emanated from them. However, it seemed that the attack hadn't caused significant damage to the Valkyries. They pushed off the ground and continued to charge towards the crowd. The bone dragons flew into the sky to attack, while Grey Bear quickly directed the crowd to form a shield formation. "Protect the Lord's safety and hold on until the two heroes win," Grey Bear suddenly said. Flash. The long sword slashed out, cutting into the shield formation. A grinding sound echoed, leaving a scratch on the heavy shields. Grey Bear and the others' idea was simple. They wouldn't clash directly with the Valkyries. They were constructs. Whether they were injured or died, it wasn't worth it for them. What they had to do was hold on until the other two heroes won their battles and came to help them. However, the idea was good, but they completely underestimated the Valkyries' combat power. The Valkyries displayed incredible combat moves. Long swords pierced through the gaps in the shields, and cries of pain echoed from within the shield formation. Perhaps the Valkyries had their own judgment mechanism. Seeing that the people here were only defending, the two Valkyries directly split up, with one launching an attack on Dimitega. This left only one construct here. Fang Hao watched as some bandit subordinates fell. His face also became serious. After casting frost armor on himself, he said, "There's one left. Prepare to attack." "Yes." "Kill." Fang Hao gave the order. The bandit subordinates instantly spread out, surrounding the Valkyrie in a semicircle and launching an attack. Fang Hao directly cast Giant Spirit Body. His body began to fill with power, and a huge blue projection, appeared behind him. Summon Wood Servants and Flame Spiders, two skills were cast one after another. In front of Fang Hao, 3 Wood Servants and 6 Flame Spiders condensed. The Giant Spirit Body also condensed the same spells, except that the Wood Servants were nearly 3 meters tall and the Flame Spiders were the size of calves. He pointed his staff, and various summoned creatures charged towards the Valkyrie. The Giant Spirit projection only lasted for 15 seconds. Fang Hao condensed another fire arrow, and the Giant Spirit Body followed by condensing a burning flame javelin. Whoosh! Whoosh! The arrow hit the Valkyrie's body and shattered. The flame javelin, however, pierced through the Valkyrie's body with a roar, and precise parts could be seen at the penetration wound. The Valkyrie's body began to tremble and stutter. The summoned creatures swarmed forward, instantly engulfing the construct. With one successful move, Fang Hao's heart instantly filled with joy. This power was really great. The countdown for Giant Spirit Body still had 5 seconds left. That was enough time for one more attack. Dimitega, make it stop moving. Fang Hao roared and condensed another fire arrow. Dimitega understood, seized the opportunity, and knocked down a construct with a sweeping kick. Fang Hao's fire arrow and flame javelin also arrived as expected, directly piercing the fallen construct. The time for Giant Spirit Body was up. The huge figure instantly retracted back into Fang Hao's body. There were still 2 Valkyries left on the scene, one for Dimitega and one for Anya, with no problems at all. 5 minutes later, the 2 Valkyries were also eliminated. That was pretty good. What was that just now? It was so big. Anya walked over, looking curious. At the time Fang Hao was getting the totem tattooed, the black-footed cat, Luo Li, had just returned. Anya had gone to play with Luo Li then and hadn't seen Fang Hao testing the effect of Giant Spirit Body. The others were also quite curious, as they had never seen Fang Hao take action and thought he was relatively weak. They didn't expect the skill he released today to be so powerful, killing 2 Valkyrie constructs with consecutive moves. Giant Spirit Body, the power of a god. Don't you think it's powerful? Fang Hao casually dismissed the Flame Spiders. He kept the Wood Servants. If there was any danger, they could continue to protect him. You're just bragging, Anya pouted. Fang Hao smiled slightly and didn't explain further. All right, treat the injured and dismantle these few for me to see what can be taken away. He took out herbs and potions for the injured people to take. Fortunately, these people had only suffered some injuries and were not in life-threatening danger. Before long, the parts of the Valkyries were all collected. Obtained: Energy Core 2, Precision Parts 85, Magic Pattern Parts 42. From the Valkyries, they obtained a new material called Magic Pattern Parts, which should also be a high-level material. After collecting the dropped energy cores and materials, everyone re-examined the surroundings of the Holy Light Cemetery. Behind the tombstone, they found a gold treasure chest. But Fang Hao wasn't in a hurry to open it. He was more curious about what was inside the tomb than opening the treasure chest. What would make the Dragon Scale mercenary group risk coming here? Open this tomb and see what's inside. Be careful, Fang Hao continued. Digging graves was something the bandits had done before. A few people helped each other and directly used ropes to lift the stone coffin out. They opened the lid and immediately retreated to avoid danger. After a few seconds of stillness, no danger appeared. Fang Hao and the others gathered around again to check the situation inside. Inside the stone coffin was a partial skeleton. Although covered in stains, the bones were like jade, appearing translucent and lustrous. This immediately reminded Fang Hao of the priest's left arm bone covered in runes that he had obtained in the basement of the temple orphanage. And this body was indeed missing 2 arms. Inside the stone coffin, the complete skull, ribcage, and legs were preserved. Could it be that they are from the same body? This made Fang Hao suspect that the bone arm he had obtained earlier was from the same skeleton as this body. The more he thought about it, the more doubts arose. If these bones and the bone arm he obtained belonged to the same corpse, then the person who assigned the mission to the Dragon Scale mercenary group is connected to the basement of the orphanage and the creation of demon puppets. Taking the deduction a step further, this person can assign missions to mercenaries in Lich's city. So could they be in Lich's city themselves? Or are they a high-ranking member of the Dragon Scale mercenary group? What? We went through all that trouble just to get a pile of bones. Anya poked her head out, her tone full of disappointment. There was nothing valuable in this abandoned cemetery. There wasn't even a single burial object in the coffin. It could be said that this ruin had nothing at all. The things they gained weren't even as valuable as the potions and scrolls they wasted. The other bandit subordinates also looked somewhat dissatisfied. Clean up the bones and bring them out, Fang Hao continued. The bandit subordinates carried the corpse out. After cleaning off the rotten, yellowed rags and mud, Fang Hao directly stored them in his storage space. Even though Fang Hao was from the Undead faction, he had never thought he would clash with the church before a conflict actually happened. But now, he had even dug up the grave of a church priest and was taking the bones back to use them further. It seemed this hostile relationship was unavoidable. The matter of these bones must be kept strictly secret. If it got out, it would likely cause a lot of trouble. Having been busy until now, dusk was approaching. Fang Hao had everyone do a final cleanup. He took out leather wraps and a large amount of hemp rope from his storage space and organized and packed all the items that needed to be taken away. Some high-level corpses were converted into skeletons by the bone dragon, using its dragon breath for easier transport. Everyone was busy. Fang Hao went to the treasure chest he had just received and opened it. Obtained: Temple Construction Blueprint, blue. Stone Carving Workshop Construction Blueprint, blue. Fine Iron Valkyrie Longsword Production Blueprint, purple. Black Iron Golem General Longsword, green. White Jade Golden Silk Coffin, purple. Lightstone 45, Shadow Stone 15, War Coin 224. Another flash of light. Fang Hao glanced over it roughly, finding no surprising blueprints or items. Temple: Tough Wood 2200, Stone Brick 1250, Fine Stone Brick 350, Cast Iron Block 400, Metal Parts 450, Traces of Prayer 10, Traces of Divinity 2, Abundant Essence 12. Description: You can place a faction's divine statue in the temple. You can also place divine statues of factions with a relationship of peace or higher with your faction. Hostile faction divine statues cannot be placed. Building a temple automatically unlocks your faction's divine statue. Fang Hao was familiar with temples. It seemed that temple was a general term, with the distinction being the divine statues enshrined within. In that case, if Fang Hao were to build a temple, the statue he would place inside would be that of the undying god, god of the undead. In addition to his own faction's divine statue, he could also place another divine statue, as long as it wasn't hostile to his faction. This meant he couldn't place the statue of the god of light. No wonder the temple in Lich's city enshrined the god of light and the goddess of fertility. It turned out they could both have two divine statues. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Fang Hao's mind again. If building a temple automatically unlocked the statue of the god of the undead, then he had already gathered 4 divine statues. This met the construction requirements for the orange blueprint he had initially obtained, wishing well. He could try it when he got back. Once the wishing well was built, he could use it to obtain the materials he needed. He continued to examine the second blueprint. Level 1 stone carving workshop, wood 1500, stone 2000, leather 800, hemp rope 500, iron 200, metal parts 120. Description: you can recruit faction units in this building to perform stone carving and artistic relief. Stone carving workshop, the name was a bit strange. But looking at the description, he could understand its function. It must be similar in function to the blacksmith shop and jewelry store. He could recruit stone carving units in this building. Their specific attributes would have to wait until they were recruited. But generally, units recruited from this type of shop had never disappointed Fang Hao. They weren't combat units, but the role they played in the territory was irreplaceable by combat units. Next were the weapon blueprints. Fine iron Valkyrie longsword, tough wood 1, cast iron block 3, fine iron 5, thick tough leather 1, essence of destruction 1. Description: the shape is exquisite, like a work of art, beautiful and sharp. The Valkyrie's longsword. Fang Hao thought of the longsword used by the Valkyrie golem. Although the golem wielded it with one hand, the slender blade should be a type of two-handed sword. Due to prolonged corrosion, it was already mottled and worn. But the rewards were generally related to the mission location, so it should be the same longsword. Moreover, this was a purple weapon blueprint, which was a considerable gain. Black iron golem general longsword, iron 5, cast iron block 5, metal parts 12, leather 2. Description: a longsword weapon specially designed for large golems, difficult for ordinary units to wield. There was no need to guess about this longsword. From the name, it could be determined that it was the longsword used by the gargoyle golem. When his gargoyle golem was made, it would be perfectly equipped. The last item was a purple finished product. White jade golden silk coffin. Category: corpse nurturing coffin. Description: a corpse nurturing coffin made of complete white jade, which has the effect of nourishing the soul for dark creatures and creatures of the Evernight. Wow, a crystal clear coffin. If he had transmigrated to ancient China, this kind of coffin would certainly only be used by members of the royal family for burial. The appearance alone was quite impressive. In the territory, those using corpse-nurturing coffins were Lola and Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu's frequency of use was still very low, always in a state of being optional. As for Lola, her status in the Evernight was not low, and her own coffin was not necessarily worse than this one. He would see who could use it and give it to them. He couldn't use it himself anyway. After checking all the equipment, the bandit subordinates had also finished cleaning up the battlefield. The 12 people, including the injured, carrying scattered spoils of war, rode the bone dragon back to Grizzly Bear Stockade. Fang Hao still had 11 people left. He dug Eric out of the stone coffin and left this ruined city directly. They hurried towards Lich's city. Night deepened. Fang Hao and the others set up tents by the roadside. Steam rose from the bubbling iron pot, spreading the aroma of hot pot. Eric, who had been unconscious for a day, sniffed. Then he drowsily opened his eyes. It hurt so much. The first thing he did after opening his eyes was cover his wound and let out a low groan. Immediately after, he recalled the battle he had just experienced. His face was panicked as he looked around. When he saw Fang Hao and the others gathered around the bonfire watching him, his expression eased slightly. He wasn't dead yet, and neither were Fang Hao and the others. He staggered to his feet and walked to the bonfire. At this time, he also noticed that Fang Hao's team had lost quite a few people. Many people still had bloodstains on them, and they hadn't brought out any spoils of war. Sitting by the bonfire, Eric looked a bit dejected. Mr. Fang Hao, thank you for saving me. I didn't know the Dragon Scale mercenary group would do such a thing and lead everyone into danger. He could imagine how difficult it was to carry him out while unconscious under the attack of such a large number of enemies. If it were him, facing the same situation, he would probably just leave Fang Hao behind and flee with his team. At most, after returning to the city, he would feel guilty and give some money to his family. And it was he who had introduced this mission to Fang Hao. Not only did Fang Hao not blame him, but he also saved him. Fang Hao said, "Let's eat first. Everything else can wait until we get back." The Dragon Scale mercenary group clearly treated us like fools. This matter cannot just pass. One sentence ignited the anger in Eric's heart. He roared loudly, "I'm going to report them to the city lord's mansion. They killed so many people in this battle. I don't believe there's no one who can control them." He touched his wound and winced in pain. The hot pot was ready, and Fang Hao called everyone to eat. Eric continued to ask while eating, "By the way, what kind of place was that cemetery? And what about the Dragon Scale mercenary group?" His memory was still at the stage where he was seriously injured and resting. After being knocked unconscious by Anya, the fat man had been sleeping until now. That was a church cemetery. The tombstones should all be for church people. The Dragon Scale mercenary group brought us here, probably never intending for us to return alive, Fang Hao explained. Before, Fang Hao had thought that the Dragon Scale mercenary group was ill-prepared or had underestimated the number of enemies. That's why the human mercenary groups suffered losses. Now that he thought about it, perhaps the demise of the human mercenary groups was part of the Dragon Scale mercenary group's plan. After all, the church still had a lot of influence. Digging up the corpse of a priest. It would be fine if it was done covertly, but if it got out, the Dragon Scale mercenary group wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. Only if everyone else died would the secret be preserved. This was also why the Dragon Scale mercenary group didn't recruit through the mission hall, but instead privately recruited some small and medium-sized mercenary groups. The church? How dare they? They're completely crazy. Eric cursed while stuffing food into his mouth. I estimate that there will be others who escaped. We'll see how things are when we get back. If someone reports this matter, we shouldn't get involved. After all, we participated in this operation, Fang Hao continued. You're right. Let's see what happens when we get back. Eric nodded in agreement. After dinner, they chatted around the bonfire for a while. Then they each returned to their rest, waiting until dawn to continue their return to Lich's city. Night grew darker. Fang Hao returned to his tent and took out a leather blanket to spread on the ground. About half an hour later, Anya, who had finished assigning the night watch duties, also lifted the tent flap and crawled in. As soon as she entered the tent, she took off her clothes. Wearing only thin underwear, she crawled directly into Fang Hao's arms. She casually hugged Fang Hao and whispered, "Do you really believe that fat man could sleep for so long?" The power of the detonator collapsed the entire ground. He didn't wake up in that situation, but just happened to wake up when we were camping and eating. What did you find? Fang Hao lay flat, one arm around Anya. I didn't find anything. I just doubted how he could sleep for so long, and then just happened to wake up here after we came out. Anya thought carefully and voiced her suspicion. Fang Hao felt that Anya's suspicion was also very reasonable. If that was really the case, then Eric wasn't as simple-minded as he seemed. He knew when he should wake up and when he should continue to pretend to be asleep. He thought about the pros and cons Eric could bring and continued. It's not a big problem. Even if he woke up while still in the stone coffin, it's fine as long as he didn't see the bone dragon. It doesn't matter if he talks about the rest of the things, and he said we didn't do him any favors. Fang Hao's biggest secret in this operation was the bone dragon. And when Fang Hao was commanding the bone dragon in battle, Eric had just fallen unconscious and couldn't have woken up so quickly. During the subsequent battle, he was hidden in the stone coffin, and even if he woke up, he would be in the stone coffin and wouldn't discover anything. Moreover, his matter was insignificant compared to the nearly 1,000 people the Dragon Scale mercenary group had killed this time. It was unlikely to attract much attention. Okay, I'll listen to you. Anya snuggled closer, blinked, and whispered, "It's still early. Want to play for a while?" Fang Hao looked at her playful appearance and immediately understood what she meant. "Isn't it too late? And we're so tired today." Anya's starry eyes sparkled. "I'm not tired, and you only cast 2 spells. What are you tired of?" After speaking, without waiting for Fang Hao to act, she took the initiative. The night stone emitted a faint light. Anya's figure was completely exposed in the air. Her wheat-colored skin was smooth and firm, and her athletic build was well-proportioned and slender, full of youth and vitality. Under the soft lamplight, her slender shadow swayed gently with the light. I was raised by an old orc. He took me to find a village that would take me in and where he could live out his old age. But after searching for a long time, no one was willing to take me in. Anya suddenly spoke, and her swaying waist gradually became more relaxed. She gazed into Fang Hao's eyes, feeling his warmth. This was the first time Fang Hao had heard Anya talk about her past. The Tooth Fighters were also a combative type among the Beastmen. But he never expected that she didn't even have a village when she was young. What happened later? Fang Hao continued to ask. Later, we stopped looking for a village and built a house by ourselves. He taught me how to hunt and fight until I was 15 and became a hero. He also died. Anya continued to speak calmly. The atmosphere in the tent suddenly became a little somber. Fang Hao could clearly feel Anya's emotions. This was the first time this carefree and not-so-brainy girl had shown such emotions. Without waiting for Fang Hao to comfort her, Anya continued. The old orc told me to go west, where there was a human city. As long as I saved enough money, I could buy a house and live there. Suddenly, I found that playing cards was a quick way to earn money, so I started learning to play cards. Poof. At this point, Anya suddenly laughed. Then, I lost all the money I had saved along the way, and I even lost my luggage. It turns out I'm really not suitable for playing cards. In the Manhwa market, I saw a human who was easy to bully and borrowed 40 war coins, and ended up losing myself. Anya spoke, accompanied by soft panting. The first time Fang Hao saw Jia, he felt like she was a delinquent girl, full of scams and gambling. In the end, she lost a bet with him and was besieged by Undead, forcing her to sign a hero contract. Now, after hearing Njia's story, he finally understood the reasons behind her personality. Traveling all the way from the Orc city in the east to here was no easy feat. The reason she played cards was because she felt it was a quick way to make money. She planned to buy her own house in a human city. So, how do you feel about living here? Fang Hao continued to ask. Without much consideration, Jia replied, "It's not bad. It feels really good to have my own house." And Jia had always maintained a relatively high level of loyalty. It was also evident that she was quite satisfied with her current life. "From the day you came, we've been a family. You're not alone anymore." Fang Hao raised his hand and rubbed Njia's head, then pinched her furry beast ears. Njia slapped his hand away, but she still had a smile on her face. Fang Hao could clearly feel her body temperature rising rapidly. Her eyes also began to become a little dazed. After a soft response, she slumped down weakly and snuggled back into Fang Hao's arms. Although Fang Hao enjoyed the pleasure Jia brought, it was getting late. He put his arms around her soft body and planned to rest and sleep. They were just getting sleepy when Jia suddenly said, "How about we play together with Ear when we get back? Last time I saw you guys having so much fun in the pool. Let's do it together." Cough, cough. Fang Hao suddenly coughed twice. This was still the same Jia, not understanding anything and fearing nothing. "You go talk to Ear. If she agrees, I certainly have no objections." Fang Hao shrugged, looking like he had no opinion. "Okay, I will when we get back." "All right, go to sleep. We have to travel tomorrow," Fang Hao continued. "Okay." The tent quieted down again, and they gradually drifted off to sleep. "Hey, do you think those white monkeys in the graveyard crawled out of the graves? Their skin is so white. Could it be related to holy light?" "Go to sleep. Don't mention the graveyard at night. Do you think Lalana will go crazy when she sees that letter and suck that fatty dry? Vampires suck blood, not fat. Stop talking and go to sleep." The next morning, early, everyone ate some simple food. Then they continued their journey back. The group hurried along the way, and finally, at 5 p.m., they approached the area of Lizi's city. Looking at the tall city walls from afar, Eric's face, covered in mud, also showed a smile and tears in his eyes. I'm back alive. I'm a pig if I ever leave the city again. And Dragon Scale Mercenary Group, you just wait. Eric stood on a stone and shouted loudly, releasing the anger that had been suppressed in his heart for the past 2 days. For Eric, being able to come back alive this time was a blessing in disguise. He had his own family business and didn't need to be a mercenary and risk his life. This time, he joined the group to experience it out of boredom. After all, every young master has a night's dream. Now that he had experienced it, he never wanted to go through the same thing again. All right, stop yelling and get into the city quickly. Everyone is tired. A mountain bandit minion rolled his eyes at him. Yes, let's go, Eric said hurriedly. The group quickened their pace and walked towards the city. Just as they walked to the city gate, they saw an old man dressed as a butler standing at the door, looking into the distance. When he saw the disheveled Eric, a look of joy suddenly appeared on his face. He rushed over with a servant. He said anxiously, "Young Master Eric, are you all right? It's so good that you came back safely." Without waiting for Eric to answer, the old butler turned back to the servant and said, "Go and inform the master that young Master Eric has returned safely." Seeing his own servant, Eric also relaxed. He casually threw the equipment into the servant's hands. "You've been waiting for me here?" The old butler nodded and replied, "Yesterday, people started escaping back one after another, saying that the team you joined was in danger, and that the Dragon Scale Mercenary Group's second team deliberately issued a trap mission. Now the whole city knows about it. The master and madam were so scared that they asked us to wait for you at the door. They were just about to arrange for someone to look for you outside." Hearing this, Fang Hao and the others understood. It seemed that many people had escaped back to the city and reported the Dragon Scale Mercenary Group's affairs. That was good, saving them the trouble. "Oh, I'm fine, but the guards at home didn't make it back alive," Eric said with a look of frustration. "All right, young Master Eric, those mercenaries all have their own destinies. It's good as long as you can come back safely. Go back with me first. The master and madam were worried sick yesterday," the old butler continued. Eric also wanted to go home and said to Fang Hao, "Mr. Fang Hao, I'll go home and report that I'm safe first. I'll treat you to a drink when I have time." After speaking, he lowered his voice and instructed, "Don't forget to help me send the letter I wrote." Fang Hao rolled his eyes. This fatty didn't learn his lesson. He had just come back alive and was planning to test the edge of death again. "Okay," Fang Hao agreed. Watching Eric leave, Fang Hao led the crowd back to their residence. From the conversation between Eric and the butler just now, he also learned that someone had escaped back to the city and reported the Dragon Scale Mercenary Group's affairs to the City Lord's mansion. According to the mercenary rules set by the Mission Hall, the Dragon Scale Mercenary Group will be interrogated soon. Nearly 1,000 mercenaries died outside. Even the City Lord's mansion would take this matter seriously. Let's see if the person who issued the mission will be found out. Returning to the residence, everyone returned to their rooms to rest. It wasn't until dinner time that they came out of their rooms again. At the dinner table, Fang Hao also saw Lalana. She was still dressed in a neutral style. After dinner, Fang Hao thought about it and decided to tell her about Eric. "Lalana, do you remember Eric?" Fang Hao asked. "Eric." Lalana frowned and recalled, "I don't remember. Where is he from?" "It was at the auction held by the City Lord's mansion last time. He said a few words to you," Fang Hao reminded. "Oh, what's wrong with him?" Lalana's tone was still calm. "I happened to meet him on this mission. It seems he has some affection for you. He learned that you were modeling for my shop and asked me to bring you a letter," Fang Hao said. Lalana's mood had improved a lot during this period. Now she was sitting in the hall. Although she rarely spoke, she was not as cold as before, as if the whole world owed her money. Fang Hao explained the matter in detail. He didn't want to lower the loyalty that had been so hard to increase because of Eric. Lalana looked at Fang Hao with some curiosity. "Where's the letter?" Fang Hao took out the letter and pushed it directly in front of Lalana. The latter tore it open casually and started reading it. After reading it, she shook it casually, and the letter was torn to pieces by energy. "The writing is too bad. Lolana stood up, stretched, and walked out. I'm going to the tavern. Tell that Mr. Eric. Thank you for writing the poem for me, but I don't like men. After saying this, she left without waiting for Fang Hao's reply. Fang Hao watched Lola's departing figure. Slightly dazed. What's going on? This script is wrong. Is it over? How come Lola is so easy to talk to today? Is there something good happening? Moreover, going to the tavern every night made Fang Hao feel a little suspicious. Could she be cultivating a vampire force in the city again? Feeling a little worried, he went straight back to his room. Then, the window of the room was opened, and a skeleton finch flew out. A carriage took Lola to the entrance of the tavern. After the carriage left, Lola did not enter the tavern, but stood at the entrance for a while. Then, she walked straight along the main road towards the central area. The sky was getting dark, and there were no pedestrians on the road. Occasionally, some drunkards and gang members saw Lola in male attire, but they didn't react. The skeleton finch followed far behind, watching Lola enter the city lord's mansion. Damn, a spy within a spy. The night was deep. Bloody mountains, Jiaohorn Ridge. Boom, boom, boom. Giant white-bone rhinos carried war drums on their backs. Skeleton soldiers sat on the backs of the rhinos, waving bone mallets in their hands, rhythmically beating the drums. Surrounding the drummers was an endless army of undead, covering the mountains and plains, eerie and terrifying. It had been a week since the undead army attacked the Bloody Mountains. In this week, nearly 100 large and small troll tribes had been attacked by the undead army. The boundless army, like a tsunami, submerged one troll village after another. The brave and warlike trolls only showed fragility and powerlessness in the face of the undead army. And as the battle progressed, the number of undead troops also expanded from the initial 3.5 million to more than 4 million. Those trolls who died in battle will become members of the undead army and continue to fight for the Lord. Thump, thump, thump. Behind the undead army, an old scout ran on all fours. Stopping in front of a white bone carriage, he loudly reported, Lord Blackthorn, news from the front. The army has arrived at Jiaohorn Ridge. The enemy has nearly 500,000, and they have defensive equipment. The undead army, tirelessly. The speed of the conquest is even higher than the efficiency of all living beings. This frequency of battle does not give the trolls a chance to breathe. Enough to drag the remaining trolls to death. A crack was opened in the car window, and Blackthorn's voice came out. What about the defensive measures? Temporary defensive walls built with logs and gravel, and a small number of chevaux de frise and iron chains were also made, the gnoll replied. How high is the defensive wall? About 5 meters, built temporarily, relatively loose. Call the other commanders over, and the rest enter a state of readiness, Blackthorn said solemnly. Yes, sir. The scout quickly retreated and called a few heroes over. Troll Temporary Camp. The patriarch of the Rockhead tribe, by Giada, looked at the dense undead army in the distance behind the city wall. The temporary defensive wall is only more than 5 meters high. He could see the scene outside by stepping on a stone. Can this kind of wall stop the undead army? What a joke. The undead army stopped in the distance, and the low drumbeat also stopped. This also gave the trolls a chance to breathe. Thump, thump, thump. At this time, a troll subordinate ran over quickly. Commander by Giada. The troll subordinate was a little breathless. Giada was immediately overjoyed when he saw his subordinate. He couldn't wait to ask, how is it? What did the orcs say? If they don't help us, the undead will attack them next. The trolls had reached a point of no retreat. Giada thought of the Cold Wind Mountains, which belonged to the same mountain range, and arranged for people to contact the orcs. At this time, the troll subordinate came back at the right time. The undead are the enemy of all living beings, and he is very confident that the orcs will agree to unite with the trolls to resist the undead together. After all, if the Bloody Mountains are gone, the next one will be the Cold Wind Mountains. At present, the undead have not launched an attack. If the orcs agree to unite, there is still a chance for the entire army to escape. Meet the orcs of the Cold Wind Mountains. The troll subordinate took 2 violent breaths. His face was very ugly, and he said, Patriarch, I can't get through. I can't get to the cold wind mountains. Hearing this sentence, the faces of Baijiata and others also became serious. He scolded, "What nonsense are you talking about? You didn't run back without even going, did you? Patriarch, a fortress has been built on the road to the Cold Wind Mountains, and the guards above are all undead. I'm afraid the Cold Wind Mountains have already been occupied by the undead," the subordinate said urgently. Everyone's faces began to change. With the ability of the undead army, if they attack the Cold Wind Mountains first, they have enough ability to occupy them. Are you sure? If you dare to tell half a lie, I will chop you down now. Baijiata stared at this person and continued to ask. I'm sure, Patriarch, I can still recognize the undead and the orcs. At this moment, all the trolls' faces turned ashen. The only way out is gone. Their only end is to fight the undead to the last moment, then be killed and join the ranks of the undead. Patriarch Baijiata, is there no other way? A troll asked. Everyone also looked at Baijiata together. Baijiata looked at the undead outside and did not answer directly. Instead, he said, "Get ready to fight. This already represents everything, which is to fight the undead to the end, and there is no better way." Dong. Dong dong. Without giving everyone much time to discuss, the low drumbeat sounded again. All the trolls were shocked and looked outside. Those drummers sitting on the backs of giant cows beat the drums again. A faint halo enveloped the surrounding undead. Baijiata's heart sank suddenly. He shouted loudly, "Return to your ranks, check your equipment, and prepare for battle." Everyone knew the outcome of this battle, but they still returned to their respective ranks, issuing one combat order after another. The drumbeat beat again and again. Circles of halos enveloped the surrounding undead army. The attributes attached to the undead war drums were also attached to each undead soldier. Blackthorn came to the position of the central army. He glanced at the troll camp in the distance and gave a soft order. Release the giant bats and ostrich beasts, and prepare the whole army. Yes. The messenger passed the message down. Skeleton giant bats soared into the sky, and under the cover of night, they grabbed detonators and flew towards the sky above the troll camp. At the same time, the shield formation in the front row opened the shields on the left and right like doors. The iron cages under the shields opened. Ostriches with detonators placed in their abdominal cavities were released. The ostriches quickly shook their heads, and the next second, they flapped their wings and rushed towards the troll camp. The ostriches all over the ground ran quickly. Not big, but very fast. In a few breaths, they had already rushed to the bottom of the camp. The sky was a dull gray. The skeletal giant bats, like a patch of dark clouds, covered the sky. The trolls raised their heads, watching the large flock of giant bats approach. The trolls who could stand here had all participated in battles against the undead. In battle, they had naturally seen these skeletal bats. The danger wasn't these bats, but the cylindrical bombs they carried. Watching the skeletal giant bats rapidly approaching in the sky, the trolls showed no signs of panic. After understanding the enemy's attack methods, they were all prepared to deal with them. Under the command of their respective captains, they orderly dove into the prepared air raid shelters, waiting for the blasting caps to explode. Boom, boom, boom. The blasting caps fell, creating indentations on the ground as they exploded. The bombing lasted for 3 to 4 minutes, except for a couple of air raid shelters that collapsed, causing casualties. Most of the trolls were completely intact, without suffering any injury. Bagart walked out of the defensive hole and looked at the casualties among the crowd. He shouted, "Prepare for battle. We are already familiar with their fighting style. Defeating these bone frames is our only hope." The battle had reached this point. Although they had been suppressed by the undead all along, they had also learned about the undead's fighting style and what each type of skeletal soldier did. The undead were also reducing the frequency of using these explosives and arrows. This proved that their ammunition storage was not much. Next, it would be a melee attack. Bagart loudly issued commands, urging the trolls to come out and prepare for battle. Even if they died, they would drag more undead with them as buried sacrifices. Just at this moment, an urgent voice from a subordinate came again. "Chief, they've sent a flock of chickens charging over." "Chickens?" Bagart looked out and saw a large group of chicken bone soldiers charging towards him at an astonishing speed. And in the abdomen of the skeletal chickens, there were still those cylindrical explosives. Damn it, how can there still be such things? Bagart's expression changed, and he immediately changed his command. It's explosives, get back into the hole. In a hurry. The trolls who had just come out crawled back into the air raid shelters. The uneven defensive walls couldn't stop the advance of the ostrich beasts at all. With the low walls, the ostrich beasts flapped their wings and easily leaped over. Flocks of ostrich beasts leaped into the camp. Looking at the empty camp, they fell into confusion. Click, clack. Turning their heads, their gaze fell on the dark cave entrances. The air raid shelters were shelters dug by the combined efforts of the trolls. Unless several blasting caps landed directly on top of an air raid shelter, normal explosions would find it difficult to destroy them. Inside an air raid shelter, a troll, leaning on the mace in his hand. Why are we retreating again? Has the bombing stopped? There's another type of undead, similar to chickens, carrying those explosives, charging over again. Chickens. Yes. After this is over, it will be hand-to-hand combat. Everyone get ready. What if those chickens with the explosives rush into our hole like this? The entire place instantly fell silent. Crack, crack. At this moment, a sound of bones rubbing against each other came from the entrance of the hole. The next second, a chicken frame that looked like it had been gnawed down to the bone stumbled in. When it saw the nearest troll, it rushed up and pecked fiercely at the troll's leg. The troll cried out in pain and kicked, crushing the chicken's head. As the bones scattered, two cylindrical objects appeared before the trolls. Looking at the smoking cylinders, fear appeared on the trolls' faces. Damn it. Boom. With the first explosion, one air raid shelter after another exploded. If they were outside, perhaps the trolls could still escape and dodge. Even if injured, they could rely on the trolls' strong recovery ability and wouldn't die immediately. But inside the air raid shelters, large numbers of tunnels directly collapsed, burying them on the spot. Blackthorn stood in the center of the army, watching the troll camp with flames reaching the sky from afar. When the explosions subsided slightly, he spoke calmly again. All troops attack. Dong dong dong. The undead war drums, the steady beat suddenly quickened. There were no mage's magic bullets, and no archer's volley of arrows. The undead army, holding their weapons, rushed forward like a flood. The white-boned giant wave swept over the defensive walls and surged into the camp. The trolls who survived the explosions, covering each other, still put up a stubborn resistance. But the number of undead was simply too large. The troll army was like a lonely island, surrounded by the sea. The waves of the sea beat against the island, gradually swallowing up the already few trolls. Bagart swung the battle axe in his hand, slicing at the skeletons that lunged at him. Bang! Just at this moment, a dull thud. Bagart's battle axe was blocked by a huge shield. The rebound of the immense force made his body sway. As he leaned back, he saw a mace covered in barbs swinging down towards his head. Bagart's expression changed, and he held the battle axe horizontally in front of him. Dong! With a muffled sound, Bagart's body was knocked back several steps by the violent impact, tripping over several trolls behind him. Wallace, look at the state you're in now. You're actually following the undead and slaughtering our own kind. Bagart roared loudly, although the other party was just a skeleton. But through the mace and the huge shield in the other's hand, he still instantly recognized the identity of the undead hero before him. Troll hero, Giant Wall, Wallace. Facing Bagart's reprimand, Giant Wall did not respond. He had no memory of his time as a troll. Even if he did, under 100% loyalty, he wouldn't care about his former compatriots. Kill! Giant Wall roared and charged out again, engaging in battle with Bagart. The mace in his hand swung widely, constantly swinging forward. Bagart, however, was fighting with his hands tied, needing to defend against the skeleton soldiers attacking from the sides, while also having to block the mace swung by Giant Wall. Finally, as Bagart's strength waned and he was unable to resist the frequent blows of the giant mace, He was smashed to the ground, directly submerged by the undead, dying in the minced flesh and broken limbs. Bagard died. The remaining trolls also lost hope. The troll race's only hero had died so easily at the hands of the undead, not even lasting longer than a regular troll. Dong dong. Just at this moment, the drumbeat from the rear changed again. Giant Wall looked back and ordered, "Shield formation, surround them." Swish, swish, swish. The shield formation, like a door, formed an iron wall, completely surrounding the remaining trolls. The encirclement gradually shrank, but the attack's speed slowed down. You should know that the undead's fighting style was to charge head-on. Now, there was a situation of surrounding without killing, which made the trolls look somewhat confused. They didn't think the undead would let them go. These damned creatures didn't even have brains. How could they possibly spare them? At this moment, some orc scouts ran over. Hiding behind the defensive perimeter, they shouted loudly to the trolls, "The commander has ordered, those who lay down their weapons and surrender can live. All others will be killed." The commander has ordered, those who lay down their weapons and surrender can live. All others will be killed. The voices of the orc scouts came from all directions. The trolls, looking at the still shrinking defensive perimeter, listened carefully to the words coming from outside. When the first troll threw down his weapon and knelt on the ground, it was like a signal, and the rest of the trolls also successively threw down their weapons and silently knelt on the ground. Trolls were brave and brutal, that was towards others. Fearing blood-throat and believing in the gods both represented a compromise and submission to strength. If they could live, no one wanted to die. Just like this, all the trolls knelt on the ground and chose to surrender. Next, the undead began to have people put chains on the trolls. The others began to clean up the battlefield. Especially Bagard's body, which needed to be identified from the ground covered in minced meat and transported back to the main city for separate handling. With this battle over, only Meat Fist, Caius remained. According to the intelligence obtained, Caius had taken the tribute to Mount Chaos, and Blackthorn's final goal was to capture Mount Chaos. All the skeletons were cleaning up the battlefield, while Blackthorn took out the sound transmission stone and sent the news from here. The next morning, Fang Hao had just woken up when he discovered the information stored in the sound transmission conch. Hearing the news sent back by Blackthorn, his heart instantly filled with joy. This way, the threat to the north of the territory was cleared, and he no longer had to worry about the trolls from the north launching an attack on him at any time. Now, only Caius, who had gone to Mount Chaos, remained. But the other party had only taken 100 or so people, posing no threat to the undead army. Hearing good news early in the morning made Fang Hao's mood very good. After breakfast, he planned to return to the territory with Anya and the others. The reward for helping Rebecca clear the Faceless Ones in Lissith City had not yet been claimed. But there was no rush, and the money from this task was nothing compared to the current funds in the territory. Everyone rode the purple-scaled horses out of the city gate. After transferring at the Grizzly Bear's stronghold, they returned to the territory. The Bone Dragon landed. Eir came to greet them with a group of maids. "Master, you're back." Einer's big eyes were filled with longing. Fang Hao smiled slightly, rubbed the other's head. "I'm back. Has anything happened in the territory these past few days?" When Fang Hao left, all matters in the territory were the responsibility of Nelson. However, Nelson rarely left the Organ Museum. Except when someone attacked, everything was still handled by Eir. These past few days, Lord Blackthorn has sent people to deliver many treasure chests. "I had them all put in the cellar," Eir replied. "Oh, okay," Fang Hao replied. After Fang Hao finished asking his questions, Anya immediately came over, linking arms with Eir, and told her about her experiences these past few days. Fang Hao didn't pay attention to the two of them. He went directly back to the Lord's mansion and came to the cellar. As soon as he entered the cellar, Fang Hao's eyes instantly widened. There were nearly 100 treasure chests placed here. They were neatly stacked against the walls. These were the rewards Blackthorn had obtained from clearing the large and small troll villages and towns. Ordinary heroes couldn't open them, so they were all transported back and stored here. He roughly counted them. There were at least 50-odd silver treasure chests and 70-odd wooden and black iron treasure chests. Although the quality wasn't high, the quantity was considerable. Fang Hao didn't hesitate. He began to open the treasure chests one by one. Streaks of light flashed, and various rewards appeared before his eyes. Obtained: black iron candlestick chandelier crafting blueprint, green. Troll stitched marching tent crafting blueprint, green. Black iron stone crusher crafting blueprint, green. Troll stone 22, war coin 78. Obtained: troll round table crafting blueprint, white. Troll hardwood double bed crafting blueprint, green. Black iron javelin crafting blueprint, green. Beast horn spider claw chandelier crafting blueprint, blue. Troll stone 27, war coin 101. Obtained: wooden barrel table crafting blueprint, white. Spiked hardwood stone blade club crafting blueprint, green. Black iron stone crusher crafting blueprint, green. Black iron large cooking pot, green. Troll stone 32, war coin 87. Obtained: thunderstorm battle axe, purple. Troll white steel heavy infantry chestplate crafting blueprint, blue. Obtained. Fang Hao opened the treasure chests one by one, and the rewards appeared accordingly. The level of the treasure chests was not high. Silver treasure chests would yield 3 or 4 rewards, while black iron treasure chests had fewer. But for Fang Hao, the blueprints for the equipment that came out were not very useful anymore. They could only be considered as expanding the number of blueprints. The only relatively good one was the finished purple equipment, the Thunderstorm Battle Axe. Unfortunately, it wasn't a blueprint yet. Thunderstorm Battle Axe, purple. Category: Battle Axe. Damage: level 5 damage. Ability: ignore defense plus 15%, additional thunder damage plus 25%, attack speed dash 10%. Description: a battle axe imbued with the power of thunder, it will destroy enemies blocking the path. This piece of equipment was quite good. In the territory, the trolls and minotaurs were good at using battle axes. It could be given as a reward to Giant Wall or Bronze Bull, Telok at that time. Using the Lord's book, he recorded all the blueprints. Streaks of light drilled into the Lord's book. After dinner, Fang Hao walked out of the Lord's mansion. It was now 6 p.m., and the sky was already gradually darkening. The weather had turned slightly cooler, and it was almost the time of Lichio, start of autumn. He had to craft all the building blueprints obtained from the cemetery before dark. First, he came to the industrial area. He opened the Lord's book and found the blueprint for the glass manufacturing plant. Glass manufacturing plant, wood 2200, stone bricks 3500, iron 1200, metal parts 820, red flame essence 5. Description: through processing, it can produce amorphous solids that maintain a certain shape. In an open area, he directly chose to build. Blue light flickered, and 20 minutes later, a factory building with a furnace appeared before Fang Hao. Glass manufacturing plant. Workers, 0/10. Raw materials, silica sand, rock salt. Production: glass fiber, glass plate, round/square, glass cup, glass bottle, glass cover, round/square. Description: through processing, it can produce amorphous solids that maintain a certain shape. Finally, I have glass. The products produced by the glass processing plant were quite varied. Glass fiber. Category: cloth. Glass fiber, it's actually cloth? Can this stuff even be made into clothes? The Emperor's new clothes? Fang Hao had never heard of or seen this name. After it was produced, he would ask Sawyer what kind of clothes could be made. Besides glass fiber, there were also glass plates, glass cups, glass bottles, and glass covers. Glass plates came in round and square shapes and could be selectively produced according to their use. Glass cups were normal containers for drinking water, while glass bottles, for now, were used as containers for alchemical potions. Besides being used by the half-demon alchemist, glass bottle containers were also regularly purchased in bulk by the Alchemist Guild and the Merchant Alliance shops. They occupied a certain market share. The use of glass covers, as far as Fang Hao knew, was as lampshades for lighting. Whether there were other uses was unclear. The raw materials used to produce glass were silica sand and rock salt. He didn't know the principle of producing glass from these two materials, but the amount of materials consumed differed. Glass fiber, glass cups, and glass bottles required 1 silica sand and 1 rock salt. The amount of materials needed for glass covers increased to 2 silica sand and 1 rock salt. The most consumed material was for glass plates, requiring 5 silica sand and 3 rock salt. There was a certain amount of rock salt stored in the warehouse, which was collected from the dry shore. Fulei's lake could continuously produce this material. What was currently lacking was silica sand, something he had never seen or heard of. He could try to acquire some in the regional channel then and see if he could exchange for some. After building the glass manufacturing plant, Fang Hao walked towards the processing area again. After greeting the skeleton craftsman, he found the blueprint for the stone carving workshop in front of an open space. Level 1 stone carving workshop, wood 1500, stone 2000, leather 800, hemp rope 500, iron 200, metal parts 120. Description: you can recruit faction units in this building to perform stone carving and artistic relief. Confirm build. 10 minutes later, a wooden workshop appeared before his eyes. Level 1 stone carving workshop. Recruitable, stone carver. Stone carver, wriggling spine 1. Description: you can recruit faction units in this building to perform stone carving and artistic relief. Upgrade required. Wood 2100, stone 2500, leather 850, hemp rope 600, iron 320, metal parts 150. The stone carving workshop and the tailor shop had the same function. Both could recruit craftsmen with special abilities. With sufficient materials in the territory, Fang Hao directly upgraded the building to level 9, which was also the current highest level. Level 9 stone carving workshop. Recruitable, stone carver. Goldsmith, wriggling spine 1. Abilities: art specialization, precision crafting. Art specialization, artistic expression plus 15%. Precision crafting, precision plus 35%, efficiency plus 15%. Description: you can recruit faction units in this building to perform stone carving and artistic relief. Materials required: hardwood 1200, stone brick 1500, thick leather 800, cast iron block 150, metal parts 1200. After upgrading the building, the next step was to recruit units. Stone carver, wriggling spine 1 recruit. Recruit. Hundredfold increase activated. Recruited skeleton stone carvers 101. Light flashed, and 101 skeleton goldsmiths walked out. The stone carvers had tall skeletons, wore leather aprons, held a small iron hammer in one hand, and a carving knife in the other. After surveying the surroundings, their gaze fell upon Fang Hao. "We are willing to serve you, Lord." The stone carvers bowed in unison. "Welcome, everyone's joining," Fang Hao replied with a smile, his gaze falling on the leader. "What's your name?" "Lord, my name is Gray." "Okay, Gray. From now on you will be the captain of the stone carvers. I will assign all future tasks to you for distribution." Fang Hao selected a captain to manage the unified distribution of tasks. "Yes, Lord. Thank you for your trust," Gray said loudly, kneeling on one knee. At the same time, Gray's favorability also increased. Skeleton stone carver Gray's loyalty to you increased by 10 points. Current loyalty is 89. "All right, get up." Fang Hao gestured for him to stand up, and at the same time, checked the stone carver's attributes. Skeleton stone carver, Tier 1. Faction, Undead. Racial traits: Undead, hollow skeleton, light weakness. Skills: stone carving, stone armor crafting. Stone carving, proficient in stone carving, relief carving, and other stone art carving. Stone armor crafting, can craft fine stone armored. Inherent skill, stone carving mastery. Note: every stone carver is an artist. They draw inspiration from life and use their hands to realize their works in stone carving. After reading the stone carver's attributes, Fang Hao's heart stirred again. Stone armor crafting. Could this be the skill for crafting finely carved stone plates? It can't be that coincidental, can it? Fang Hao immediately asked. "Gray, can you craft the finely carved stone plates for constructs?" "Yes, Lord," Gray nodded and said. Hearing the other party's reply, Fang Hao was overjoyed. He immediately opened the blueprint on the Lord's book and said to Gray, "I have the blueprint for the stone armor needed for the gargoyle construct here. I'll give you the blueprint tonight for you to copy, and then arrange for everyone to start crafting." The parts for the gargoyle construct were only missing the stone armor material. Now the stone carvers could complete it. Once enough stone armor was crafted, he could also start producing constructs. The units in the territory could also be more diversified, not just undead. Okay, Lord. When you are resting, you can just leave the blueprint, Gray agreed. Good. After assigning the task to the stone carvers, Fang Hao continued to build houses for the skeleton stone carvers to rest in, instructing them to arrange their time reasonably and not to work constantly. After dealing with the matters of the stone carvers, Fang Hao hummed a tune and continued walking towards the city center area. Among the newly acquired building blueprints, there was still a temple. In Fang Hao's view, its function conflicted somewhat with the Pantheon, as both were places for enshrining god statues. The Pantheon blueprint level was orange, while the temple blueprint level only reached blue. The two blueprints were still quite different. However, the construction condition for the Pantheon required the Lord's Mansion to reach the stone castle level. And currently, the Lord's Mansion building level was called Level 9 Lord's Stone Building, calculating based on the previous pattern of the Lord's Mansion, changing its name every 5 levels. Upon reaching level 10, it would become a stone castle. Thinking of this, Fang Hao checked the materials needed to upgrade the Lord's Mansion to level 10 again. Hardwood, stone bricks, iron. These basic materials were all very sufficient. What was currently lacking? Fine stone brick 2147/5500, marble floor 0/800, terracotta tile 2485/3000. Fine stone bricks and terracotta tiles were being continuously produced by the factory. It was just a matter of time. But there was no way to obtain marble floors yet. He could try to acquire some in the regional channel then. If he really couldn't get it, he could also place a purchase order with the Merchant Alliance. This kind of production material should not be difficult to acquire. Since the Pantheon couldn't be built yet, Fang Hao decided to build the temple first. Temple, hardwood 1200, stone brick 1250, fine stone brick 350, cast iron block 50, metal parts 45, trace of prayer 2, trace of divinity 2, abundant essence 3. He chose a location that looked good. Directly chose to build. Blue light rapidly stacked up to form the outline of a building. It lasted for 30 minutes. As the light dissipated, a grand building appeared before his eyes. Even though it was called a temple, the scale of the building was not small. It also occupied an area of nearly 300 square meters. Temple. Category: Building. Placeable: 0/2 God statues. Main slot: 0/1. Secondary slot: 0/1. Effect: God statue grants divine power. Increases by an additional 10%. Description: enshrining God statues in the temple will grant additional attribute bonuses. Subordinate cities can choose to enshrine God statues in their temples individually according to their needs. Cannot build faction-hostile God statues. As expected, the temple could house 2 God statues. Moreover, after the temple was built, the description also changed. This meant that each city could enshrine God statues according to its needs. If this city needed farming and gathering, it would enshrine the goddess of fertility. If it needed combat, it could enshrine the god of slaughter. It was quite user-friendly. As the building was completed, a row of prompts also appeared. Temple construction completed, unlocked God statue, god of immortality and death, undead god statue. Indeed, after the temple was built, the undead god statue was directly unlocked automatically. Undead god statue, with 720, stone 2100, magic essence 2, trace of death 3, shadow stone 5. Description: the undead god looks down upon this land, coldly observing every living being, calculating the time, waiting for you to embrace its embrace. Built. Light rose up again. When it dissipated, the undead god statue appeared before his eyes. The undead god had the appearance of a hooded skeleton draped in a cloak. In its bony hand, it held a staff with a large gem at the top. The staff was raised diagonally upwards, looking as if it was casting a spell. This image wasn't much more friendly than the slaughter god statue. Undead god statue blue. Category: Special building. Effect: undead building material consumption minus 10%. Undead unit all attributes plus 10%. Description: The undead god looks down upon this land, coldly observing every living being, calculating the little life you have left, waiting for you to embrace its embrace. The effects granted by the undead god were all aimed at the undead faction. It could also be considered a relatively useful attribute. The temple could enshrine god statues. Fang Hao set up the undead god statue in the main slot of the temple and the goddess of fertility in the secondary slot. Setup complete. Lich, Nelson's loyalty to you increased by 10 points. Current loyalty is 97. Skeleton Goldsmith Luke's loyalty to you increased by 10 points. Current loyalty is 95. Skeleton Taylor Sawyer's loyalty to you increased by 10 points. Current loyalty is 92. Skeleton, current loyalty is 90. Prompt after prompt appeared like a screen refresh. After establishing the undead god statue, all heroes and units of the undead faction had their loyalty increased by 10 points. Most had already exceeded 90, and the rest were all above 80. This was already considered very high loyalty. Having been busy until now, it was already very late. There were still some equipment blueprints left. He could craft and check them tomorrow when it was light. There was no need to rush for now. Returning to the Lord's mansion, Fang Hao went directly to the courtyard and comfortably soaked in the hot spring. The effect of the rejuvenation hot spring dispelled the fatigue from the past few days of rushing around. While soaking in the hot spring, Fang Hao didn't forget his own matters. Opened the regional channel. Skyrock Alliance. What are the recruitment requirements? I heard it's quite hard to get in. Yeah, my main city is level 6, and I still don't meet the requirements. I heard there's a limit on the number of people, so they only recruit some powerful members. I guess Boss Fang Hao can definitely get in. By the way, Boss Fang Hao hasn't appeared during this time. Nothing happened, right? Boss Daily Incident. Boss Fang Hao. The shop is still continuously selling equipment. How could anything happen? Fang Hao lay in the hot spring, watching the content of everyone's chat. The Skyrock Alliance was a new alliance that had appeared during this time. This kind of alliance was not a civilian organization like the Azure Dragon Mutual Aid Society from before, but an alliance established by Yu Tianpeng after he obtained an alliance token in the last system mission, which was recognized by the local forces. The alliance leader could recruit members from this region. Fang Hao didn't know the number of people that could be recruited, but judging from the high threshold set for recruitment, there should be a limit on the number of members in the alliance, besides various member bonuses and benefits. The most attractive thing was the support function for alliance members. Once an ally was attacked, the remaining members could provide support of up to 150 units. This kind of support was not by running over, but by teleporting through the alliance building. At present, this chaotic and disorderly place where death could occur at any time. The temptation of being able to receive support from allies was far greater than obtaining powerful equipment. Therefore, as soon as the Skyrock Alliance appeared, it was sought after by other players. Joining now not only required paying a joining fee, but also completely obeying the management of the alliance leader Yu Tianpeng. The threshold was already very high, and this Yu Tianpeng was still one of the people Fang Hao had blacklisted. Fang Hao was still a little worried about the rapid expansion of the Skyrock Alliance. But the other party hadn't shown any hostility yet, and they didn't know the location of his territory, so there really wasn't a better solution. On second thought, even if the members of the Skyrock Alliance were very capable and could support and attack each other, they might not be a match for his million-strong undead army. People need to eat. How could they feed so many people? Provoking his army could easily flatten them. The only obstacle was the location and distance of each other's territories. Even a bone dragon couldn't fly around aimlessly to find the location of the other party's territory. After figuring it out, Fang Hao shifted his attention back to his own matters. In the regional channel, he edited and sent a message. Buying a large amount of silica sand, long-term stable purchase. Also buying marble floors. Brothers who have them, please private message directly. As soon as Fang Hao spoke, the channel instantly fell silent. Holy cow! Boss Fang Hao, back from the dead. What is silica sand? I've only heard of silicone. Fang Hao's appearance broke the calm of the regional channel. The topic, which had previously been varied, instantly became unified. What? Boss Fang Hao wants to make a silicone girlfriend. I don't want a girlfriend. Just use the leftover material to make me a fleshlight. Look closely, Boss said silicon sand. Aren't you afraid of scraping yourselves raw if you use that to make a girlfriend? Haven't you heard the saying about grinding an iron rod into a needle? What's sand? All I see is girlfriend. Selective blindness, huh? The channel gradually became lively, and the topic began to drift. Everyone discussed girlfriends made of various materials, while Fang Hao's purchase request was quickly pushed out of sight by the rapid scrolling. People who joined later only knew about the girlfriend discussion and were unaware of Fang Hao's purchase request. Just as Fang Hao was about to repost the message, ding! The sound of a private message suddenly rang out. He immediately opened the private message. It was from a stranger. Boss Fang Hao, I have silicon sand here. The name of this lord was quite easy to remember, Jima. Seeing that the other party had silicon sand, Fang Hao immediately asked, how much do you have? Not much, but I have a silicon sand mine here. If the price is right for you, boss, I can arrange workers to mine it specifically and supply you continuously, Jima quickly replied. Jima had discovered a silicon sand mine near his territory long ago. He had even arranged for workers to mine it previously. But later, he found that these white particles were useless for his own development. They also couldn't be sold in the channel. Then he directly stopped mining, and some of the existing inventory was used for paving roads. Not much was left in the warehouse. Today, he suddenly saw Fang Hao buying silicon sand in the channel. Jima couldn't quite believe it and repeatedly confirmed whether the purchase was for silicon sand or silicone. After confirming he wasn't seeing things, he immediately showed a joyful expression. Fang Hao was a top-tier boss in the entire region. If he could establish a connection with him, even a simple cooperation could help him make a stable profit. So, while everyone in the channel was discussing girlfriend dolls, he directly sent a private message to Fang Hao. First, send me the blueprint/description so I can take a look, Fang Hao replied. He wanted to confirm whether the other party was a fraud, liar/scammer. Okay, silicon sand, boss, is this the thing? The blueprint/description was sent over immediately. Fang Hao opened the blueprint/description to view the attributes. Silicon sand. Category, material. Description, white sand particles composed of quartz grains. It was indeed silicon sand. Even if he didn't recognize it, the system information couldn't be faked. How much do you have in your warehouse now, and how do you want to trade? Fang Hao continued to ask. The other party also mentioned having a silicon sand mine nearby. This could provide a continuous output of silicon sand. This would also be beneficial for Fang Hao's glass production, but the prerequisite was to see what the other party needed and if the price was reasonable. After Fang Hao asked, the other side fell silent. After a while, Jima sent a message. There are 20 units in the warehouse. I want to exchange them for 10 of the two-handed light crossbows you sell. In this world, materials were measured in units. For a material like silicon sand, 1 unit was roughly half a sack. The two-handed light crossbow was a green weapon Fang Hao sold in the channel. Each one was sold for 20 units of iron or 5 units of rare materials. 20 units of silicon sand for 10 light crossbows meant the equivalent of 200 units of iron. This was an exchange ratio of 1:10. 1 sack of silicon sand was equivalent to 10 units of iron. Fang Hao didn't know the difficulty of mining silicon sand, but iron was the main popular product in the channel, and since currency couldn't be used in the channel, iron units served as currency. Initially, he purchased flax from Deng Bin, and the ratio of flax to iron was 5:1. 5 units of flax could only be exchanged for 1 unit of iron, and the other party also bore the labor cost. Fang Hao thought for a moment and immediately replied, iron is a popular item, but silicon sand can't be sold in the channel. If you are willing to sell, I can exchange 3 units of iron for 1 unit of silicon sand. You can consider it. Silicon sand couldn't be sold, but currently, not many people seem to have it. It could be considered a rare processing material. Moreover, he needed a continuous partnership with the other party, and offering too low a price might discourage the other party from mining silicon sand. After some thought, Fang Hao felt that 3 units of iron was a price worth trying to negotiate with. If the other party disagreed, he could increase the price. Jima was silent for a moment, but then directly agreed. Boss, the mining difficulty of this silicon sand is not small, and this price. Even if I sell you the stock I have now, it will be difficult to continue mining at this price later. Then what price do you have in mind? There are others selling silicon sand as well, and I will choose the best one to cooperate with, Fang Hao immediately replied. Fang Hao's words made Jima fall into a difficult choice again. If others were selling silicon sand, then he couldn't ask for an unreasonable price, and a long-term partnership with Fang Hao would also be of great help to his own development. He gritted his teeth and said, Boss Fang Hao, the minimum is 1 silicon sand for 5 iron. If you are willing to cooperate with me, I can guarantee a fixed output of silicon sand. Fang Hao saw the exchange ratio proposed by the other party and felt it was reasonable. At least for now, he hadn't found a second person selling silicon sand. He could cooperate with him first, and if the price was unreasonable, it could be adjusted later. Okay, put your current stock of silicon sand on the shelves first. If you can guarantee a weekly output of 100 units of silicon sand, I can maintain a long-term cooperation with you. If I stop purchasing, I will also notify you a week in advance, Fang Hao said. Okay, I can guarantee the mining volume. Jima immediately agreed. Immediately after, Jima's designated trade was sent over. Fang Hao also gave the other party 100 units of iron. When he needed something, he could use the iron to trade himself. In the regional channel, iron served as currency. After completing the transaction, Fang Hao designated the goods to the warehouse, not to his side. Boss, should I arrange for people to mine silicon sand now? Jima confirmed again. You can. Okay, Boss Fang Hao, pleasant cooperation. Ending the chat with Jima, Fang Hao wrapped a blanket around himself and walked out of the Lord's mansion. In the glass manufacturing plant, he arranged for laborer skeletons to process the glass. He also handed the blueprint from the Lord's book to Gray the stone carver to copy, so he could make the finely carved stone slabs. Returning to the hot spring again. 2 more people were already inside. Anya was wearing a sailor uniform, lying on the stone steps, putting fruit into her mouth. And Eeyore was sitting beside her, her face flushed with embarrassment. She was wearing that black bunny girl outfit, revealing her white, lotus root-like arms, and her long legs were clad in black stockings made of night silk. Her entire body was sitting in the hot spring, and she was wet. Hearing footsteps, both of them looked up at Fang Hao at the same time. Eeyore's face turned even redder, while Anya's eyes lit up. Where did you go? Anya asked directly. I went to give instructions to the stone carver. What's wrong? Fang Hao also sat down in the hot spring. Didn't we agree to play together after you came back? Did you forget? Anya flipped over to sit up and said. Hearing Anya's words, Fang Hao immediately understood. No wonder the atmosphere felt a bit off today. It turned out Anya really went to talk to Eeyore about this. Looking at Eeyore's expression, it seemed the other party had also agreed. Otherwise, she wouldn't be wearing such an outfit and sitting there somewhat shyly. Now, of course, we'll be going to bed soon. Anya pulled Eeyore up. The 2 of them, one on the left and one on the right, surrounded Fang Hao in the middle. The next day, early morning, Fang Hao woke up from his sleep, soft bodies pressed tightly against him. Anya and Eeyore, one black and one white, one on the left and one on the right, were tightly hugging him, sleeping soundly. Anya's long legs were draped over his waist, while Eeyore's fair arms were tightly wrapped around him, her arms enveloped by softness. They had distributed themselves quite well, each occupying a spot without fighting. The 3 of them had also been up quite late the previous night before returning to the room to sleep. Looking at the scene before him, the soft touch coming from beside him, Fang Hao felt his body was about to have a normal reaction again. He took a deep breath and carefully lifted the arms on his body. As soon as he moved, Eeyore opened her eyes, looked at Fang Hao, and then looked at the sunlight streaming in from the window. She immediately realized that she had gotten up late. She couldn't be compared to Anya. Anya was a hero, and it was fine for her to sleep in and be playful. But she was a maid, and she had gotten up even later than her master. She immediately got up and said, Master, I will serve you in getting dressed. You slept so late yesterday. Rest a bit more, Fang Hao said with a smile. How can I do that? Fang Hao looked at the time. It was just 6:35 in the morning. I also need to go out and handle some things. You sleep for another hour, and then bring Anya down, Fang Hao said. Seeing Fang Hao caring for her, also showed a gentle smile. Okay, master. Thank you, master. Fang Hao pinched her little face, got out of bed, and put on his clothes. After a simple wash, Fang Hao walked out of the Lord's mansion. The morning sun was still strong, giving a warm feeling. The other maids in the territory were also up and doing their work. Just as Fang Hao was about to start his morning exercise, he saw Nielsen, Sawyer, and others walking back together from a distance. So many undead. What were they doing so early in the morning? Fang Hao walked towards them, and everyone greeted him. Good morning, Lord. Good morning, everyone, Fang Hao replied with a smile. All the undead heroes and artisans had loyalty above 80 points and would not do anything to harm him. But seeing them return together, he was still a little curious. Fang Hao came before Nielsen and asked curiously, Did you all go for morning exercise this early? You're joking, sir. No matter how much we exercise, we cannot strengthen our bodies, Nielsen said, leaning on his staff, and continued. We went to pay homage to the statue of the god of the undead. Oh. He had built the statue last night, and the loyalty of the undead had increased. It made sense that they would go to the temple area today. After all, every undead believed in the god of the undead. Fang Hao didn't say much more about this matter, as it was freedom of belief. Humans, undead, beastmen, trolls, they all believed in different things. Believe in whatever they want, as long as their loyalty doesn't drop. By the way, Scholar Nielsen, is there any progress on the demon puppet? As they walked, Fang Hao asked. Progress is quite smooth. I can already inscribe runes on the bones. Speaking of which, the method for making this set of puppets is quite magical. Even I have never heard of this kind of inscription method, Nielsen said. Nielsen might not be proficient in everything, but having lived for a long time, his knowledge was vast. There weren't many things he hadn't heard of. You can already inscribe? That's great. I just happened to get some more bones when I went out this time, Fang Hao said, taking out the bones he had obtained from the graveyard. The crystal-clear bones emitted a faint glow. Even without Fang Hao's introduction, Nielsen could tell that these came from the same body as the arm he had obtained previously. Sir, where did you obtain these? Nielsen asked curiously. After death, bones that appear in this state must belong to someone of high status. Now, only a right arm was missing to form a complete skeleton. It should be from the graveyard of the Church of Light. That graveyard has been abandoned for a long time and won't attract attention, Fang Hao replied softly. That's good. Nielsen beckoned, and two skeleton warriors came over, picked up the bones on the ground, and sent them into the organ museum. Sir, I will continue working on the demon puppet then. After the priest's left arm was inscribed with puppet runes, its attributes had changed from bone to alchemical artifact. Even if Fang Hao collected the complete corpse in the future, it couldn't be transformed into a skeleton hero. Its only use was to be directly made into a demon puppet to test the effect and power of this unusual alchemical rune. Thank you for your hard work, Scholar Nielsen, Fang Hao nodded. Nielsen bowed again and walked into the organ museum. Thud. With a dull sound, the stone door on the second floor of the organ museum closed tightly. It seemed Nielsen was going into seclusion for a while again. After Nielsen left, Fang Hao went to the silkworm breeding room again and used the colorful young silkworm summoning scroll. He summoned 80 colorful young silkworms and handed them over to the maids for breeding. Walking out of the silkworm breeding room, he came to the open area reserved in front of the warehouse. This was where he tested equipment. After all, under the hundredfold increase, the quantity of equipment produced required an open space. First were the cotton fluff acolyte gloves and the copper bell hardwood pastoral staff. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained cotton fluff acolyte gloves 101. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained copper bell hardwood pastoral staff 101. 200 pieces of equipment appeared around him. Cotton fluff acolyte gloves. Category: gloves. Defense: secondary defense. Ability: herb processing +10, bandaging +5, Description: special gloves made for devout acolytes. Unlike the hand armor he had made, these gloves were made of cotton fluff. They could provide warmth and were gloves for winter use. The added attributes were quite good, increasing herb processing and bandaging, suitable for Red Fruit, who was studying the herb notes. Moreover, Fang Hao planned to establish places in each city for residents to receive medicine and treatment in the future, and these gloves could also be put to use. Cotton flannel robe, green. Category: chest armor. Defense: Tier 2 defense. Abilities: bandaging plus 5%, midwifery plus 10%. Description: a special robe made for devout acolytes. Both the robe and the acolyte gloves are for wearing in winter. The attribute bonuses to bandaging and midwifery make them suitable equipment for acolytes. When winter comes, they can be sold to the temple. It's just that the temple doesn't seem to have much money. Continue crafting the next piece of equipment. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Obtained 101 Copper Bell Hardwood Shepherd's Crook. Copper Bell Hardwood Shepherd's Crook, green. Category: Shepherd's Crook. Damage: Tier 1 damage. Abilities: movement speed plus 5%, animal husbandry plus 10%. Description: a shepherd's crook with a copper bell. Shaking the bell will cause grazing cattle and sheep to return on their own. As expected, this shepherd's crook has nothing to do with priests, but everything to do with herding cattle and sheep. The orc villages north of the territory, near the pigman village, are currently developing animal husbandry. They raise a large number of livestock, which Petty then buys up and transports to various cities according to demand. This is also the main source of meat for the hot pot restaurants. Knowing the purpose of the shepherd's crook, Fang Hao crafted another 1,010 of them to send to the pigman village. The remaining 2 blueprints are for the fine iron Valkyrie longsword and the black iron construct universal longsword. However, one of these pieces of equipment requires fine iron, and the other, the construct universal longsword, is too large and only suitable for constructs. They are not needed at the moment. It's not too late to craft them when they are needed. Directing the skeleton warriors to organize the equipment. A maid came running over. "Master, Sister Air said that dinner is ready." "Okay, I know," Fang Hao replied and walked towards the Lord's manor. After breakfast, Fang Hao came to the Merchant Alliance building. As soon as he entered, he saw the skeleton merchant, Duojin, sorting out the received orders. With the passage of time, Fang Hao's shop has become somewhat famous in the Merchant Alliance. The quality is consistent, and the delivery speed is fast. This allowed him to quickly accumulate a customer base. "Good morning, Lord. I have something to discuss with you." Duojin hurriedly saluted when he saw Fang Hao enter. Fang Hao came this time intending to use the orders to purchase the marble flooring needed for the level 10 building, but he didn't expect Duojin to have something to discuss with him. "What is it?" Fang Hao sat down in front of the counter. Duojin took a piece of paper from under the counter and handed it to Fang Hao. "Merchant Alliance invitation. Note: with this invitation, you can participate in the local Merchant Alliance auction." "An invitation?" "Yes, Lord. The Merchant Alliance will hold an auction in Outpost 032 in 2 days. This invitation is the entry pass for the auction," Duojin explained. He had heard about the Merchant Alliance auction the first time he went to the Merchant Alliance outpost. The auction isn't held often, and there's no fixed schedule. The auctioned items are all very precious and rarely seen items. In addition to the Merchant Alliance members, the leading figures of the top local forces also attend the auction. Perhaps there is a high chance of seeing Bone King, Audis, the immortal king who introduced him to the Merchant Alliance. Thinking of this, Fang Hao suddenly thought again. The place is a mixed bag. Wouldn't he, a close combat weakling, be in danger? Does this invitation have a limit on the number of people? Fang Hao asked. Duojin thought for a moment and said, "There is no fixed number requirement, but the Merchant Alliance outpost has a maximum limit of 10 people. The maximum number of people from a single force cannot exceed 10. The Merchant Alliance outpost is a neutral public area and also a place to sell high-end goods. In order to prevent conflicts between forces in the outpost, a rule was established that no more than 10 people are allowed. But usually, only 2 or 3 people go to the outpost. If there is a real conflict, they will launch a war rather than bring a few people to fight in the Merchant Alliance outpost. That is to say, no more than 10 people is fine. Yes, Lord. Fang Hao nodded to show that he understood. He could bring a few more heroes with him to the auction. The auction is full of big shots. He can't lose his momentum. Putting away the invitation, Fang Hao continued. Duojin, do you have marble flooring for sale? Duojin pulled open the shelf behind him and checked. Finally, his gaze fell on a grid in the middle. Lord, there are 500 units of marble flooring for sale here, priced at 1,000 war coins, Duojin said. Good heavens, 1,000 war coins. This price really startled Fang Hao. War coins are a very valuable currency. This means that one piece of marble flooring sells for 2 war coins. 2 war coins are enough to buy a slave from the slave market. 50 war coins can buy you a night of moon gazing with a girl of any race in the Merchant Alliance Tavern. Paving the ground is so expensive. Is there only 500 pieces? The level 10 Lord's Manor requires 800 units of marble flooring. 500 pieces is not enough. Lord, marble flooring is usually common, but currently, only one vendor is selling it, and there are only 500 pieces, Duojin replied. Fang Hao thought for a moment, since it's usually common, and 500 pieces aren't enough to upgrade. He doesn't need to be so anxious. Are there any blank purchase orders left? Purchase orders are updated every 7 days. Currently, they are all handled by Duojin. Except for special needs, what is filled in are basically the rare materials that the territory lacks. Yes, Lord. Use one to fill in marble flooring production blueprint, Fang Hao said. The main city and sub-cities will use marble flooring for upgrades in the future. If he buys it every time, the consumption will be too great. It's still more economical and affordable to produce it himself. Understood, Lord. Duojin didn't waste any words, directly took out a blank purchase order, and wrote down the purchase information for the marble flooring production blueprint. After writing it, he threw it into the mailbox behind him. The rest is to wait for someone to sell the blueprint. After sitting for a while, Fang Hao left the Merchant Alliance building. He had people send the crafted shepherd's crooks to the orc villages in the north. He also took in Jia and Dimitigia to several subordinate cities to check on their development. Soon, 2 days passed. This day at noon, Fang Hao walked out of the Lord's Manor. He brought in Jia, Dimitigia, and also Lorena, who had arrived last night, intending to go to the Merchant Alliance outpost. Lorena had been staying in Lizi's city. Previously, Fang Hao saw her entering the city lord's mansion late at night, and he suspected that she had some connection with the city lord's mansion. But Lorena's loyalty to him had not decreased, which also meant that she had not done anything to harm him. This made Fang Hao's heart full of curiosity. This crazy woman, wouldn't she like being the city lord's wife and gotten together with the city lord Aubrey? That can't be. With Lorena's standards, she shouldn't be able to look up to Aubrey. This made Fang Hao unable to guess the result for a while. As for notifying Lorena to return and accompany him to the auction, Fang Hao didn't use a commanding tone. Instead, when conveying the message, he mentioned that he was invited to attend the Business Alliance auction and happened to have a vacant spot, asking if she would like to go and relax. Upon receiving the message, Lorena rushed back overnight, waiting to attend the Business Alliance auction with Fang Hao. Fang Hao led the three into the shop to exchange for enough war cards and took out the teleportation scroll for the Business Alliance's station. Tearing open the teleportation scroll, a faint blue light curtain appeared in front of them. Stepping into the light curtain, they experienced a dizzying sensation. When they opened their eyes again, they had already appeared on the streets of Station 032. The streets were smooth and the flower beds were lush. The environment was very pleasant. Compared to the empty streets last time, there were many more people this time. Divided by race, they walked in groups of 3 or 5. From their ornate attire, it could be seen that these people held significant status within their respective races. Is this the new Business Alliance station? Lorena curiously surveyed her surroundings. Haven't you been here before? Fang Hao looked at her. With Lorena's status, she should have visited the Business Alliance station before. I've been, but not here. I remember the station at that time was built on the back of a giant turtle, and you could hear the sound of the waves from the city center, Lorena replied. It seemed that the business alliance had changed its station, or perhaps there was more than one station location. If there was station 032, wouldn't there be stations 031 and 030? You're bragging. There's no turtle that big, Anjia said, somewhat disbelieving. Lorena wasn't angry and said with a smile, the outside world is very big, little girl. Anjia curled her lips and didn't continue to argue with her. Anyway, she was convinced that she was bragging. Fang Hao glanced at the gold watch on his wrist. It was 1:12 p.m. The auction was scheduled to start at 2 p.m. They had timed their arrival perfectly. This also avoided having to eat lunch outside. It's almost time. Let's go to the auction first, Fang Hao said, leading them towards the central area. The first time he came to the station, he was introduced by Skull Merchant, Ruer. At that time, Ruer had told him some things about the Business Alliance auction, so he naturally knew the location of the auction. Walking along, they soon arrived at the stone castle where the auction was held. In front of the stone castle, many people of other races were also gathered. They were lined up in a long queue, waiting orderly to enter the venue. Fang Hao glanced around, seeing beastmen, humans, fairies with dragonfly wings, and dwarves with thick beards. He also saw Dimitka's clansmen, lizardmen, in the crowd. But obviously, Dimitka didn't know them. They looked at each other without any reaction. Fang Hao and his group silently joined the queue, but still attracted a lot of attention. Although their clothes were ordinary, the combination was a bit strange. Everyone else came to the auction in groups of their own race. They had humans, beastmen, lizardmen, and a handsome person wearing a black hood during the day, making people suspect whether they had another identity. The others frequently cast curious glances, whispering to their companions. Fang Hao didn't care about the others' discussions. Not to mention that fighting wasn't allowed here. Even if there was danger, Dimitka and Lorena were enough to protect his safety and used the teleportation scroll to return to the territory. They waited silently, and the queue moved forward little by little. After them, several more forces joined the waiting queue. One of them suddenly caught Fang Hao's attention, and the other party also saw Fang Hao. They both saw the Lord's book on each other's waist, and their eyes met, both slightly stunned. This was a tall man with long black hair, a high-nose bridge, sunken eye sockets, and a pair of blue eyes. He gave Fang Hao a feeling of being a mixed race of Asian and European descent. The man wore a sky-blue heavy robe, covered with patterns of the sun, falcons, flowers, and wings. On the tall blue top hat was the Sun Cross badge. Coupled with the clergy members following behind him, the force he belonged to was not difficult to guess. Fang Hao sized him up, and the other party was also observing Fang Hao. They nodded to each other and didn't have the idea of talking. Lorena also noticed Fang Hao and the other party's actions. She whispered, "Don't tell me you know a saint of the church." "Saint? What's that?" Fang Hao asked back. He could see that the other party had a different status in the church. Being able to represent the church to participate in this auction meant that he had a high status. Even if he was called a holy son or holy maiden, he could understand. But what did saint mean, disciple? You don't know? Then how do you know that person? Lorena pushed up the hood she was wearing, her face full of curiosity. I don't know him. We just met and nodded as a greeting. You wouldn't understand the friendship between men, Fang Hao said. Lorena rolled her eyes at him. Fang Hao continued to ask, what is a saint? According to their church's saying, a saint is a disciple of a saint in the church, or a follower of the church's ideology. Once selected, they are considered to have a very high position in the church. Lorena gave a simple explanation. She didn't know much either. The church and Eternal Night were also hostile relationships. But the relationship wasn't that tense. Even if conflicts occurred, there was a chance to sit down and negotiate, and use contracts to mediate the conflicts. But once the church and the undying undead met, it was a rhythm of drawing swords and fighting. The church's saint was a follower of the church's ideology, and Fang Hao was a rapidly rising star of the undead race. Different beliefs made the relationship between the two of them like they were each other's father's killers. Now they met and nodded as a greeting. How could Lorena not be surprised? How did this saint become one? Fang Hao continued to ask. It seemed that people with opportunities were not just himself. In addition to Yu Tianpeng, who was rapidly rising and established the Tianpeng Alliance. Today, he saw another saint. He had a very high position in the church. How would I know? Is there only one saint in the church? How much power do they have? Can they mobilize the army? Fang Hao thought for a while and continued to ask. I heard that a total of 12 saints will be selected. These 12 people will undergo layers of selection from faith to ability, and eventually one person will become the next pope. That's awesome. Do you think I should try to get close to him so that he won't be embarrassed to hit us when he becomes the pope in the future? Hearing Fang Hao's words, Luolana was a little speechless. Do you know him or not? Luolana asked curiously. Not really, but we can try to build a connection, Fang Hao replied. Luolana shielded her eyes from the dazzling sunlight again. You have enough power to kill him. He's not the only saint. Even if one dies, the church might not make a big fuss. There were a total of 12 saints, and they were also in competition with each other. If one died, the other 11 would probably be overjoyed. It wasn't surprising that Luolana's first thought was to kill the other party. Given their hostile relationship, a private assassination wouldn't carry any sense of guilt. Fang Hao shook his head. Forget it. He didn't provoke us. There's no need. In his opinion, the difference between himself and the saint was just that they had chosen different factions for their class change. He didn't have that much deep-seated hatred. Disgracing the undead, Luolana muttered softly. The lined-up queue moved forward little by little. At this moment, at the back of the queue, another group of orcs walked up. Among these orcs, a man with black hair and black eyes also had a lord's book hanging from his waist. The man was similar in age to Fang Hao and seemed to have taken a stamina potion, as his physique looked good. It seemed that as time passed, more and more lords were developing rapidly through various opportunities and methods. Fang Hao wasn't the only one growing. This person was different from Fang Hao and the church saint. He followed closely behind the orcs, whispering softly, his face full of flattery. The leading orc had dark red skin, belonging to the demon-blooded orc lineage. Judging from her chest, she should be a female orc. As soon as the black-haired man approached, he spotted the saint and Fang Hao. After saying a few words to the female orc in a low voice, he walked straight towards the saint and started chatting. After chatting for a while, he turned around and strode towards Fang Hao. Approaching Fang Hao, the man smiled and said, "My name is Tang Chi. What should I call you, brother?" Fang Hao didn't want to expose himself here, and the church saint not far away was also looking over. Everyone in the channel knew that he was connected to the undead. Saying his name now could easily attract the church's attention and cause trouble. So he simply said, Fu Lei. Fang Hao used the name Fu Lei. Even after crossing over, there were still many people with the same name. He wasn't afraid that the other party would look for Fu Lei based on the name. Tang Chi smiled broadly and said, I really didn't expect that after 2 months of crossing over, I would meet a fellow countryman here. It's incredible. Yes, it is, Fang Hao also smiled. It's really not easy to survive. That brother is luckier. He landed near a human city. His food and clothing are much better than mine. Tang Chi looked enviously at the saint. From Tang Chi accompanying the orcs, one could tell that his territory was in the orc tribal area. When everyone crossed into this world, the location of their territory was a gamble. If you were lucky and there were resource areas nearby, you developed quickly. Those who were unlucky were eliminated in large numbers on the second day after crossing over. No matter how much Tang Chi complained, at least he survived. And those who died in various ways didn't even have a chance to complain. Since the topic had shifted to the saint, Fang Hao lowered his voice and asked, Where is that person from? He's got quite the entourage. As far as Fang Hao knew, most of the people who crossed over to this area were from his country, and he had never seen anyone with a hooked nose and blue eyes like that saint. Even if they were crossers, they were foreigners. Oh, that guy is mixed race. His father is from our country, and his mother is from the Russian side, but he speaks Mandarin better than I do, Tang Chi said, glancing at the saint not far away. Oh, I see, Fang Hao said. Tang Chi continued to size up Fang Hao, then leaned closer and said, Brother, who did you come with? Unlike the mixed-race saint, who was easily distinguishable by his uniform church attire, Fang Hao stood in the queue, sandwiched between orcs and lizard men, making it hard to tell who he came with. Fang Hao understood what he meant and looked at the lizard man in front of him. Crossers could see the hero's level. When he saw Dimitage's orange tier 8 strength, Tang Chi's expression changed instantly. He had never seen an orange tier hero before. While Tang Chi was surprised, he also saw a figure wearing a cloak in front of the lizard man. The displayed stats were actually dark gold tier 5. Tang Chi was stunned. In such a long queue, how did these two people end up together? It was a bit baffling. Did you come with the orcs? Fang Hao asked casually. Tang Chi smiled, looking a little embarrassed. Yes, that's the daughter of the Blackstone tribe chief, and we have a good relationship. She brought me to take a look this time. He seemed to feel that the person he was attached to couldn't compare to the lizard man. When introducing himself, he mentioned the tribe's name and the chief's daughter, apparently trying to regain some face in this way. Half a month ago, the Blackstone tribe was searching along the way for a fleeing tribe. They discovered Tang Chi's territory. The daughter of the Blackstone chief led the team and was about to launch an attack on Tang Chi's territory. But Tang Chi had some tricks up his sleeve. He proposed to negotiate with the chief's daughter. After one night, their relationship changed from enemies to allies. Tang Chi also used this connection to attach himself to the Blackstone tribe. Not only did he not have to worry about harassment from other tribes, but he also traded goods with the orc tribe to develop his own strength. During this time, the development of his territory had greatly improved. Fang Hao frowned when he heard Blackstone tribe. It seemed that he had heard from Luo Li before that the tribe that forced them to migrate was the Blackstone tribe. It couldn't be such a coincidence, meeting people from the Blackstone tribe here again. Moreover, the leader was the daughter of the Blackstone tribe chief, a muscular warrior with dark red skin. This meant that Tang Chi's territory was to the east of his own territory and not too far away. Oh, if you have a chance in the future, you can go to a human city. The orc side is relatively chaotic and dangerous, Fang Hao replied. Yes, I know, Tang Chi said. The queue continued to move forward. Tang Chi said again, I wonder if Big Boss Fang Hao and Big Boss Yutianpeng will come here. Fang Hao will definitely come. I wonder if I can meet him. After speaking, he looked into the distance. You know Fang Hao? Fang Hao asked curiously. From his tone, it sounded like he knew him. It's not really knowing him. My previous boxer briefs were bought from him. I just want to see what Big Boss Fang Hao looks like and get to know him, Tang Chi said, lowering his voice again. Fang Hao re-examined Tang Chi and suddenly realized who the person in front of him was. The guy whose leather pants rubbed his privates purple, who claimed not to wear underwear and walked with a swagger. Damn, it's him. A loyal user of his underwear business. The two chatted in low voices, each probing the other for information they were curious about. The queue continued to move, and it was almost Fang Hao and his group's turn. Tang Chi said goodbye to Fang Hao and walked back to the Blackstone tribe's queue at the rear. The leading female orc looked ahead and said, That person you were talking to, is he also from your hometown? Yes, Tang Chi immediately replied. Is his city near the tribe? The female orc continued to ask. Probably not. He came with the lizard man, so he shouldn't be near the tribe, Tang Chi immediately replied. The female orc felt a little regretful when she heard he wasn't near the tribe. Humans like Tang Chi, who suddenly appeared, possessed a special kind of magic power, which had greatly helped and benefited her tribe. She even gradually received more attention from her father compared to her other brothers. Moreover, through contact with Tang Chi, she felt that human men were also quite good. They were gentler and more meticulous than orc men, and she was very satisfied. She couldn't provoke the human from the church, but this ordinary-looking person, she might be able to figure out a way to bring him into the tribe. The female orc stared at Fang Hao greedily, thinking about countermeasures in her heart. At this moment, Dimitaja and Luolana simultaneously turned their heads and glanced at the female orc. The female orc's expression instantly froze. Two icy killing intents spread throughout her body, as cold as falling into an ice cave. Her forehead instantly became covered in sweat, and her thick, hairy legs trembled uncontrollably. This was a warning. It was definitely a warning. If she dared to do anything, the other party would kill her. Who the hell were these people? This was unbelievable. The female orc cursed inwardly, quickly lowered her head, and didn't dare to look again. Please present your invitations, sir. At the entrance, a human guard was checking the invitations. Perhaps it was because Fang Hao was also human. His attitude was noticeably better than towards the previous few races. Even after joining the Merchant Alliance and being in a neutral state, there were still emotional changes to some extent. Fang Hao took out his invitation and handed it to him. The guard glanced at it briefly. "Sir, how many of you are there?" "There are 4 of us," Fang Hao said. "Ah? Oh." The guard was stunned. "Good heavens, are they here as a group?" An orc, a lizard man, a human, and someone wearing a cloak in broad daylight who didn't look like a normal human. It was indeed a strange group. The other party did a simple registration and issued a number plate. "All set, sir. Please come in." The guard cleared the way. Fang Hao nodded, thanked him, and walked straight in, pushing open the door and just stepping into the venue. Fang Hao and Njia showed surprised expressions. From the outside, the auction house looked like a 4-story stone castle building. But inside, it was spacious and bright, like entering a modern commercial building. The floor was gleaming marble, and the surroundings were adorned with various luxurious decorations, radiating wealth and opulence. The interior space of the building was completely hollowed out, forming a massive central venue. On the first floor were rows of tables and chairs. The second, third, and fourth floors were private rooms of different sizes, surrounding the central stage. "Sir, may I see your number plate?" A female sprite flew over. Her fair feet hovered a few centimeters above the ground, and she smiled at Fang Hao. Fang Hao handed her the number plate. The sprite continued, "Sir, your seat is over here. Are the private rooms upstairs open to the public?" Fang Hao looked up. There were quite a few of them. Moreover, having a private room would also be beneficial for keeping their group's presence confidential. The sprite attendant replied, "Sir, the private rooms on the second floor are open to the public. The prices vary from 1,500 to 5,000. The price was really expensive. We'll take one." Fang Hao still chose a room. The sprite checked the room reservation information at the front desk, and only 2 private rooms on the edges were vacant. Fang Hao chose the one on the left, paid 1,500, and then took the elaborately decorated magic energy elevator to the second floor. After entering the private room, the sprite gave a brief introduction and then turned to leave. The room was about 40 square meters, not large, but the decoration was quite luxurious. At the same time, Fang Hao also knew why this private room hadn't been reserved. From the window, one could overlook the entire auction floor and stage. However, the window was partially blocked by a load-bearing pillar of the building, obstructing 1/3 of the view. It significantly affected the viewing experience. As more and more people entered, the light signs outside the private rooms on the 3rd and 4th floors also lit up one by one, indicating that the distinguished guests in the private rooms had arrived. The 3rd and 4th floors were not open to the public. Those who could be in the private rooms were figures from the top-tier forces in the area. The few of them chatted in the room for a while. Soon, the lights in the hall instantly extinguished, leaving only the stage lights bright, drawing everyone's attention to the stage. The auction host appeared, exchanged a few pleasantries, and then immediately presented the first auction item: an orange-tier battle axe with fire attribute damage. Orange-tier weapons were considered minor artifacts in this area, because higher-tier weapons only existed in legends or were held by a few top forces. They were simply unavailable to the outside world. Orange tier became the top-tier equipment that could be traded on the market. After the auctioneer announced the starting price, bidding began below the stage. 1,350,000, 1,400,000, 1,450,000. Bids were called out from the hall. Fang Hao wasn't looking at the battle axe. Instead, he was fascinated by the spotlights on the stage and the strangely shaped microphone in front of the host. What's going on? Can they generate electricity here? What's with those lights? Fang Hao asked. Luolana glanced at them and said softly, "They should be products of goblin technology. They are very good at researching these strange and quirky things." After all, among those present, Luolana had more experience. Goblins? Those short guys in suits. What do you think they rely on to survive on this continent and have their current status? Luolana continued. This surprised Fang Hao a little. He wasn't surprised by the appearance of spotlights, but rather by the fact that this kind of product, similar to electric energy, was invented by goblins. Okay, I've learned something new, Fang Hao said. Ultimately, this orange-tier battle axe was bought by a race that looked like stone people for 3 million. The bidders for this kind of weapon were all tall and burly figures. Some smaller-sized races, or even humans, didn't bid. It was a niche item. The first item sold for a good price, and the host successively auctioned off the second, third, and so on. They were also sold quickly, with no items going unsold. Fang Hao and the others weren't interested in these, so they just watched, chatted, and ate the free snacks. Soon, the auction reached the 10th round. Next is the 10th auction item, the Magic Energy Reactor Construction Blueprint. As we all know, all products of Goblin technology are inseparable from magic energy for power. This is also the first time the Merchant Alliance is selling the blueprint for a reactor to the outside world. The starting price is 10 million, and each bid must not be less than 1 million. The host spoke loudly into the microphone. Hearing the other party's words, Fang Hao, who was leaning back, suddenly sat up straight. What's going on? They're selling a power plant blueprint. I just learned something about Goblin technology from Lorana. The short and less combat-effective goblins are able to hold their current position on this continent because of their intellect and technological products centered around the magic core. People collectively refer to this type of product as Goblin technology. The Magic Energy Reactor, also known as the Magic Core, is the foundation of this technology. To put it in a way that Fang Hao can understand, it's like a power station. And the other supporting Goblin technology products are like electrical appliances, relying on the energy produced by the Magic Energy Reactor to maintain operation. This type of reactor is not a secret, and all races are aware of it. But it's the first time it's being sold as a commodity. After listening to the auctioneer's eloquent speech, the entire hall fell into a brief silence. People looked at each other, but no one made a bid. Everyone knew the function of the reactor and its inherent value. However, the Magic Energy Reactor is the core energy source of Goblin technology, and the development of the races present is not based on Goblin technology. It's still hard to say whether it will truly be valuable after buying it back. Even if they have 1 or 2 Goblin products, they will rely on replacing the energy core to maintain them, and they won't spend tens of millions to buy some blueprint. Except for the transmigrators, it's hard to say whether the local forces can build it according to the blueprint after buying it back. The host was full of confidence, but the scene was a bit awkward. Everyone, some magic energy products will be sold later. This is a rare opportunity, the host said again. At this moment, from a private room on the 3rd floor, a voice slowly came. 11 million. Wow. As soon as these words came out, the entire hall became noisy. This 10 million was already an astronomical figure for most people present. Everyone knew there would be big shots who weren't short of money, but this number being casually spoken still surprised most people. 12 million. Someone on the 4th floor made a bid. 13 million. 14 million. 15 million. 20 million. On the 3rd and 4th floors, the originally silent private rooms began to bid against each other. The price was directly raised to 20 million, and the bidding only paused slightly. Fang Hao was originally a little interested. This kind of energy, similar to modern electrical energy, could improve the situation of the territory if used well. Replacing manual labor and providing basic security might even be achievable. But when the amount reached 20 million, it directly turned Fang Hao into a bystander. The price was a bit too high, and buying it back at the cost of a significant amount of money might not be a good thing. Now that he knew about the reactor, he could slowly look for the blueprint later. Maybe he would open it from a treasure chest someday. Wouldn't he have picked up 20 million for free? In the end, a private room on the 4th floor bought this blueprint for a price of 25 million. This made the bystanders below surprised by the wealth of these people. The auction continued, and in the middle, a waiter brought pastries and drinks. In the 17th round of bidding, Fang Hao bought an orange-quality organ jar. It cost him a total of 5,100,000 Warfire coins. This was because no one was bidding against him, and he only added 100,000 to the low price to buy it. Organ jars are magical artifacts unique to undying undead. They seal the organs of powerful creatures to gain ability bonuses for their troops. Currently, there are only 2 organ jars in the territory, one that seals the blood race, the revival organ jar, and another that seals deep sea species, the lightning hand speed organ jar. And just now, Fang Hao thought someone would bid against him. But after he opened his mouth, he realized that only he was buying. Even the legendary king of bones, Otis, did not participate in this bidding. Not long after, there was a knock on the door, and a waiter walked in with a wooden box in his hand. He respectfully said, "Sir, this is the item you purchased." "Okay, put it here." Fang Hao pushed the prepared Warfire card in front of the waiter. The waiter put down the organ jar and carefully checked it. After confirming that everything was correct, he bowed slightly and exited the room. Fang Hao opened the upright wooden box, revealing the familiar shape of the organ jar inside. Organ jar, orange. Category, magic container. Ability, killing mastery. Killing mastery. Each time an enemy is killed, within 3 seconds, attack power plus 100%, attack speed plus 75%. Description: in the endless darkness, death crows with black feathers search for their prey. They rush into the enemy camp, chasing the terrified people, releasing the wildness in their hearts, and enjoying the pleasure brought by killing. Killing mastery is already a very powerful buff attribute. 3 seconds of time has no impact on team buffs. Continuously killing enemies will continuously refresh the skill, maintaining the attribute of 100% attack power for 3 seconds. Therefore, he was quite satisfied with this organ jar. After a short intermission, the auction continued. Round 25. Next, we will auction the 25th item, the Tear of Asha. The host tapped the hammer in his hand. The starting price is 9 million, and each bid must not be less than 150,000. The Tear of Asha, according to legend, is the tear shed by a god. It is a very rare material. It is far rarer than materials like sun essence and traces of the earth. Only a few special buildings or items will use the Tear of Asha as a material. Similarly, because it is too rare and expensive, a very high threshold has been set. Most people don't need it, and some don't even have blueprints that require the Tear of Asha. When they hear that this material is being sold, the most they do is exclaim that the Merchant Alliance is powerful enough to obtain such a thing. However, coincidentally, Fang Hao had an orange blueprint, the Wishing Well. And the Tear of Asha is one of the materials in the Wishing Well. The more precious and rare it is, the more Fang Hao had to obtain it in this auction. If it were bought by others and used directly, it might be a long time before he could obtain the Tear of Asha. Of course, this also needs to be within a certain price range. If the price is too high and exceeds his ability, he would not insist on buying it. When no one in the entire hall made a bid, Fang Hao was delighted. Could it be that, like the organ jar, no one was buying it because it was too unique? The host introduced the preciousness of the Tear of Asha again. Fang Hao then pressed the bidding button in the private room. 9,150,000. People looked at the second floor in surprise. Although they couldn't see the people in the private room, they clearly remembered that this room had just spent 5 million to buy an organ jar. Now they were going to spend 9 million to buy the Tear of Asha. Everyone whispered to each other, wondering when the people on the second floor had become so rich. The host breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that no one in the entire hall was raising the price. Fortunately, the item was not passed. 9,150,000 once, 9,150,000 twice. Is there a higher price? The host raised the wooden hammer in his hand, just about to bring it down. Suddenly, the bidding light in the private room on the third floor lit up. 9,300,000. Hearing someone raising the price, his tone changed from decline, and he loudly asked, "Okay, VIP on the third floor, the Chu family, 9,300,000. Is there a higher bid?" Fang Hao sat on the sofa, feeling a little surprised. What's going on? They didn't add the price early or late, but just as the hammer was about to fall, they added 150,000. He highly suspected that the person on the third floor was an accomplice arranged by the Merchant Alliance. But with only the two of them bidding, the chance of buying it was still very high. 9,450,000. The third floor added 9,600,000, 9,750,000, 9,900,000, 10,500,000. When Fang Hao called out the price of 10 million, the entire venue fell into silence. Although items reaching 10 million were not uncommon, was a material worth calling out to this extent? On the other hand, it was the competition between the second and third floors. It was not common for buyers on the second floor to dare to bid against the big shots on the third floor, and some were even gradually gaining the upper hand over the third floor. At this time, in the private box on the third floor, a fairy girl with butterfly wings on her back was sitting on the sofa, pouting. This was a flower fairy of the fairy race. She was petite and very beautiful, with a pair of pointed ears similar to those of elves, looking very cute. Hearing that the second floor had raised the price to 10 million, the flower fairy's face instantly changed. Damn it! Is it those damned orcs who are intentionally trying to trick us? How could the people on the second floor use the Tear of Asha? They must be maliciously raising the price, the flower fairy girl said angrily. The top few forces were all on the third and fourth floors. In their eyes, the people in the private rooms on the second floor were at most nouveau riche. How could such people use something like the Tear of Asha? And it was even hard to say if they had 10 million. There was a high possibility that they were maliciously raising the price, intentionally trying to harm them. Recently, the Dream Forest of the fairy race had a significant conflict with the orc army. Although there was no large-scale war, there were constant skirmishes. The girl thought more and more that it was those orcs who were causing trouble. I don't think so. No one knows about our intention to buy the Tear of Asha. How would those orcs know it's us? The fairy guard beside her analyzed. Then who else would raise the price to this level? And since we can all get the news that the Merchant Alliance is auctioning the Tear of Asha, it is very likely that the orcs also receive the news. The flower fairy girl continued to refute. The fairy guard also had no way to explain. Everything was just their own speculation. Then what should we do next? The chief asked us to bring the Tear of Asha back, but the current price has already exceeded the amount of Warfire coins we brought. The Tear of Asha was something the chief had repeatedly emphasized. Whether they could build the ultimate balance and rebuild the glory of the fairy race, the Tear of Asha was a very important step in between. If they couldn't bring it back this time, they would still face the harassment of the orcs. The fairy race had been glorious, but their current population is too different from that of the orcs. Quantity completely makes up for the gap in quality, but something they were originally determined to get. A guy popped out on the second floor and directly raised the price to 10 million in one go. This had already exceeded the money they brought, and even if they went back to the clan to get money now, they wouldn't be able to gather enough during the auction. Moreover, they suspected that the orcs were maliciously raising the price. If they kept adding to the price, they would just be acting as patsies. On the stage, the host couldn't hide the joy in his heart and directly asked the private room on the third floor, 10,500,000 Warfire coins once. Does any guest need to raise the price? All the spectators also looked towards the third floor. But this time, the third floor remained silent, seemingly acquiescing to this price. After the host confirmed 3 times, bang! With the final hammer fall, the Tear of Asha was ultimately purchased by the person in the private room on the second floor. The Tear of Asha was in hand. After returning and collecting the other several materials, he could build the wishing well. Through the wishing function of the wishing well, he could directly obtain the materials he wanted. However, after the host brought down the hammer, he was not so excited in his heart. He was thinking about who the guy on the third floor was. This set of actions was more like malicious bidding, trying to trick him. The money he had finally saved during this time was almost all gone now. Fortunately, the Tear of Asha was indeed precious and useful to him, so it wasn't a loss. Not long after, the staff delivered the Tear of Asha, and Fang Hao also paid the corresponding Warfire coins, completing the transaction. The auction was still going on. Because he had spent almost all his money, Fang Hao didn't buy anything else. Until 5 p.m., the auction ended, and the few people also walked out of the auction house. After leaving the auction house, Fang Hao and the others had dinner at a tavern. When they planned to return, there were only a few pedestrians left on the long street. As the few people walked forward, a figure quickly swept past them, blocking their path. This was a fairy girl with a body size similar to a Barbie doll and butterfly wings on her back. And the next second, the fairy girl's body instantly grew larger, becoming about 1.5 meters tall, with pointed ears, a lowly girl. Is something wrong? Fang Hao curiously sized up the fairy girl. The original size of the fairy race was about the same as a Barbie doll, and they could even stand in a human's palm. However, the fairy race has a spell that can make their body size close to that of humans for a short period of time. The fairies working in the Merchant Alliance also work while maintaining a human body size. The fairy girl looked at Fang Hao, then at the few people beside him, and said calmly, "I know you bought the Tear of Asha. This is very important to us fairies. I hope you can let me have it." Fang Hao looked at the fairy girl and guessed without saying that she was the one who had bid on the third floor. 20 million. The fairy girl frowned. What? Seeing the fairy girl's expression, Fang Hao was also stunned. You don't mean to get it for free, do you? You will gain the friendship of our dream forest and become our friend. She still wanted to get it for free. Forget it. You keep the friendship for others. After Fang Hao finished speaking, he took his people and planned to leave. The fairy girl's expression instantly became serious, and she coldly questioned, "What do you mean? I spent 10 million to come here to make friends with you? Are you perhaps overestimating your fairy race a bit too much?" Fang Hao's tone became serious. This woman has a serious problem with her brain. She wants to take something I bought with money with just a word of friendship. I don't know if this woman is stupid or if she thinks he is stupid. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Just then, several more fairy guards rushed out from all around, surrounding the few people. The fairy girl then showed a smug smile. "Don't worry, we won't kill you. We'll just take the Tear of Asha, and we'll give you some compensation then." After speaking, she lightly waved her fair little hand, and the guards around them gathered closer.